We are going live. Here we go. I am coming, Constantinople. Here I come.
Constantinople.
That's some. Here I
Wow.
come, Is that the Residence? Here I come, Constantinople. I am coming, Constantinople. Here I come.
I was just thinking about the city, not the song.
It was. I remember it was a song that one of my suite mates in college played all the time, and I hated it. And somehow I grew to like it because he played it all the
I
time.
still have one I hate. One of my roommates played "Give Me Back My Bullets" by Leonard Skinner consistently,
Ah.
and I still hate that song to this day.
Hey, hey, sleepy reader.
Oh, Damien.
How are you doing this evening?
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah.
Terrence, too.
Good evening. We'll have Paulo here an hour late since he's still not on daylight savings time.
Sleepy, which song did your friend play all the
time? Leonard Skinner or The Residence?
Or maybe both.
Maybe both.
Maybe The Residence.
Afternoon for him. Yep, it is. It's what, 3:01?
Oh, yeah, he's there on the other coast. So he's at 3:01.
Yeah.
I would still be at work. About this time at 3:01 today, I would have been rather not happy. So thanks, Sleepy Reader, for reminding me of that.
Yeah, this morning I went out for my normal bike ride. Well, I was about to go out for my normal morning exercise bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
Constantinople, The Residence one. Here I come, Constantinople. We're all in crazy time zones. Yeah. It also grew on me after it. Yeah, like he used to play it. I used to hear that once, twice, 3 times a day for a month or two. Like I said, I eventually was like, well, now it makes me nostalgic, though I haven't heard it in a long time. I'll have to track it down. Find it on YouTube, of course. Yeah, I was going out for my normal bike ride, saw a flat on my bike tire. I was like, I wish I would have seen this earlier.
Yeah.
Went to change my usually changing a flat is a 10-minute job.
Mm-hmm.
An hour later, I finally figured out that I think it was my bicycle pump isn't working. In that, usually when you pump up a bike tire, you pump it up to about anywhere from 90 to 110 psi. I usually like it around 90 these days. And I'm pumping with it, and there's a gauge on my tire even.
Right.
Wouldn't go above 30 and would kick back on me like it's not supposed to. Anyone else pick up the John Severin book from Tomorrows?
No,
I have not.
I wouldn't mind seeing it, though.
Yeah. I had a roommate who hated me playing the Ramones all the time. 2 years later, he was a bigger Ramones fan than me. It happens sometimes.
I still want to get that Ramones box set that Tim has just for some of the artwork that's in it.
Yeah. I have the Marie Severin T.O. Morrow's book. That's really good. I enjoyed that one. Took me like 2 years to finally read it. I think it came out, I don't know, it came out a decade ago now.
Yeah,
but
just about every book I've ever read by them has been well done.
Yeah. Most of their stuff is well done. And like a lot of the Marie Severin book was from other sources too. So I don't think it was all new.
Gotcha.
But it was all new to me, so it didn't matter.
Right.
But I really enjoyed that one, Marie Severin. Like I said, I really liked reading about her time at EC Comics, especially way back in the beginning. That was kind of interesting.
She started doing coloring, right?
Yeah. And I still don't know when color guides started in comics, because they mentioned EC Comics, Marie, because color guides are. That's what the colorist would do. Would paint with watercolor over in those days stats. Later on, Xeroxes of the original art blown, and then they'd send that off to the separator, and the separated The separator would do that. Marie was not around in my Marvel days, though I did get to talk to her at a couple of conventions. But no, she wasn't around then anymore at Marvel. And it said in this book that Marie was the first one to do color guides, but I don't know if that was for EC Comics or
just in general.
In general, because you would send your stuff off to be colored to the color separators, and they just do their best.
Right.
So it was like but I can't imagine, like, Superman didn't have. DC wasn't in charge of the Superman coloring. I couldn't imagine they'd just leave it to a color separator, as successful as they were with that book.
That's a good question.
It was like, but EC Comics didn't have color guides before Marie Severin.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of interesting. Matter of fact, what was that?
I was reading an older comic yesterday. Actually, it was Tom Corbett. Do you remember the Space Patrol series back in the 50s?
Yeah.
Okay, it was just an adaptation, or that I don't think it was an actual adaptation of a filmed episode. It was just like original story, but I saw it in both black and white and in color, and boy, it looked a lot better in black and white. Night and day different.
Yeah, because they could have got bad coloring. Matter of fact, I was just looking at where did I see that? There's a group I belong to on Facebook called the Neil Adams Almanac. And
is that one ran by Arlen Schumer?
It sure is.
That's why I don't belong to it anymore.
Yeah, he put some people off, that's for sure.
I am definitely one of them.
Yeah. I heard Hearst had special color separators for specific newspaper comic strips. Oh yeah, there's a great, let me see if I can find that bookmark. There's a absolutely great, I think I've mentioned it before, history of print. There was this one guy, I have it buried here somewhere in my bookmarks. There was this one guy who, it started with him with somebody talking to him about Roy Lichtenstein and saying Roy Lichtenstein painted the Ben-Day dots on paintings. And he said to himself, are those really Ben-Day dots? Is that what they're called? And that sent him down this rabbit hole in the history of printing. And the short answer is no, they're not Ben-Day dots. But the long answer is this really long, like 10-part blog he's got about the history of printing and how much, like, especially the big, like he was saying here, whoops, where'd he take it out? The Hearst had special, the color separators who worked on some of those big comic strips. They explained how they did everything, and it was really complicated. And they really paid it. Like if you were on a big strip, like the beautiful Gasoline Alley stuff that I think, what's his name, Frank King also did color guides for. They really had to get. It was really a craft to get those the color separators to do nice color separations.
Right.
It was this, like I said, I really need this. So I think this is the second time I mentioned it and couldn't find this. Let's see, blog, because it is just the best thing I've ever read on the history of printing. Where is it? What's the name of it? Printing History, Legion of Andy. So look up the Legion of Andy in Google in printing history, and you'll find this blog, and it's just fascinating. It goes all the way back to like the late 1800s to describe different methods of printing, and it all brings it all up. Like I said, this the chapter about those separators,
right,
was just fascinating to me.
Were most of those working for King Feature Syndicates, which is the biggest comic syndicate back then?
I don't know that there were so many of them back then. I mean, they were all big. The
I was just curious. I just wonder if they were independent contractors back then, or if they were like, working as part of a syndicate.
Oh, I think that the separators work for the printers. They
Okay.
worked at the print shop, so that's who employed them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, definitely check it out. And like the comic book owes its existence to a change in printing and a change in color separation technology, which I can't exactly remember what it is now. But he goes through it all in the Legion of Andy, where he taught, like I said, there was these color separations for like Sunday comic strips weren't cheap. That was a lot of craft and a lot of hand labor.
Sure.
But for comic books, they found a much, much cheaper way to do it, because the cheaper way to do it came about at the same time as the birth of the comic. So we were able to do color comics over here in this country because of the change in printing.
Gotcha.
So it's really interesting.
And they didn't have super saturated blacks where the paper got wavy, right?
Nah. Well, I don't even think you could underprint in those days. If you look at old comic books, you can see sometimes where like the red overlaps the black. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Right. That's because they didn't actually have rich black where they can put color under there. That's how you can tell.
Sometimes that can be so distracting that you don't want to actually see it.
Right. You'd see yellow printed over the black a little bit somehow. You'd be like, what? Because they didn't have.
And then you can't unsee it anymore, and you get mad at yourself for not being able to.
Color work before the digital age fascinates me in its logistics and its steps and workers. Does it go coloring with pigment by hand, and then the guide, the color steps off to the it goes. You make. And let me see if I can pull one out back here, because I have one I bought. I got one from. There we go. These are what old color sets look like. And it's just, this is just a Xerox. I got 2 pages next to each other, but it's 1 page and 1 page. It's just how I have them stored and mounted. This is from, I think the backup in Ari. I bought this off of eBay once. And the colorist would get a Xerox of the original art blown down to comic book size. Then they'd use usually Dr. Martin's watercolor dyes rather than or regular, and they'd color it all in. But the important thing too is these numbers on the side. I don't know if you can see the numbers or not, but there's all like her orange hair right there. It's right next to it. It says YR3, and that tells the color separator what color to use, which is Y means 100% yellow, and R3 means, because there was they only had like 64 colors, so you had R3 is like the third value of red, which is like a 75% red. So it's like they only had R1, R2, and R3. Oh, they had R and R3 and R2. I think they added an R1 later on, which was like 20%. But it's like, YR right there, YRB2. So that's 100% yellow, 100% red, and B2% blue. And it's funny because I was just, I mentioned the Neal Adams Almanac before. Hello, Mr. Gretzky. I mentioned the Neal Adams Almanac before because there was a link there to someone's blog where he had posted the color guides that Neal Adams did to a Neal Adams issue of Batman. There was like 3 pages of color guides he had there. So you could, and he had them juxtaposed with the printed page with the scan of so you could look at the color guides and then see the printed page. That was pretty cool. But somebody mentioned in the a lot of people see these color guides today and see like R3 and think that's like a 30% red, because that's what we'd think today in the age of digital coloring. But it's not. It's really like a 75% red. It's just like the third value of red they have. So
so if you had R2D2, would it just be white and blue?
Yeah, art, and there's no D's.
Okay.
And you couldn't even color with black. It's like there were no, which is weird because um the reason that the Hulk they wasn't gray was because in order to make gray in a comic book, you can't use black, or in an old time comic book. Now you can. The only black on the page was the 100% black of the line. So you couldn't. So if you wanted to make gray, you had to use like a 30% blue, 30% red, 30% yellow to mush them all together and make gray.
Right.
The problem is it's tough to make a consistent gray like that. But what I didn't know, what I only found out a few years ago, was you could use shades of gray in covers, but you couldn't in the interiors. So if you look at like 60s Batman comics, they could use, especially Neil Adams did this. You could use gray for the gray of Batman's costume on the cover. But inside you couldn't, so it's like two different colored grays on the
Was
inside.
that just because of the way the color stock or the paper stock interacted?
No, that's just because of money.
Oh, okay.
Because a color separator had to hand cut color separations for the cyan plate, the magenta plate, and the yellow plate. If you wanted them to hand cut color separations for the black plate, that's a third more money. So what was different about the covers? I think it was just that they spent a little bit extra money. They would spend the extra money to make the cover look a little bit better. And I think a lot of that was Neil Adams. Neil Adams really, Neil Adams really worked hard to get better printing and better coloring in comics.
So that's how we got all those purple gorillas on DC Comics.
At a place like Marvel in the 70s, it was a team of people, and all they did was color set. No, some kind of sweatshop. No, that was the separators. They used to call them the little old ladies in Connecticut, but I don't think they were really that old. And it was, I think it was by like the 70s, it was Murphy Anderson who had a color separation shop in Connecticut. I think it was him. He was the boss there. It was his business. So it was like Marvel would send their color guides. And like I said, the color separation shop, I think was originally the printers. But like I said, I think by the 70s, like Murphy Anderson had his own color separation shop. So I think they would do the color separations there and then send it to the printers. But I don't know if Murphy Anderson's shop and the little old ladies in Connecticut were the same shop or not. But even in the 80s, Murphy Anderson had a color separation shop.
Just another case of follow the money in the comics industry back prior to the 70s, and it all leads back to Connecticut.
I'm sure Murphy Anderson found out he could make more money providing color separations than by drawing.
Yeah.
Marvel had a couple of in-house colorists, though, because like I know Marie Severin. First it was Stan Goldberg, I think, in the 60s. Then Marie Severin in the 60s into the 70s, and then it was George Russo sometime in the 70s took over as the in-house colorist. And when I was there in the 90s, it was Paul Becton and George Russo's. And George Russo's would color all the covers, because they wanted special attention, and once again, paid to the covers. And they wanted them done in-house. So they could just, the editor could just give George the, and Paul did some of them too, especially in the 90s when they were doing 100 books a month. And they could also do color, if they needed to do color corrections, they'd give that. I think Paul did most of the interior color corrections in the 90s.
Right.
And George did the covers, but of course there was overflow sometimes.
I was just thinking if you had to do cover, I can't even talk to him, colors for covers. you get some art that would, let's say, look like an Archie comic book. It's like, oh, great, this is easy. And then you get something about Bill Sienkiewicz, and it's like, how in the hell am I going to do this?
Yeah. Sometimes they'd give like in that, I think it was the Daredevil book. The which one do I have? Born Again? Or is it the Marvel cover? It might be the Marvel covers book that has Daredevil covers in it. Klaus Janson was also a colorist, and he was inking, the Miller stuff. So you'd see notes from Klaus Janson to George Russos in the margins of the covers. You can see Klaus writing, George, how about a red glow around this? Hey, George, this is a night scene. How about this? Gotcha. So that's always interesting to see. So did color become cheaper when digital took over? Less labor? Well, they started paying the colorists less. That's why a lot of the colorists from the early 90s stopped working in comics, because when things went digital, they paid us. They paid a smaller page rate for coloring. So let's say your page rate for coloring a comic was $35 a page when it was the color guides era in the early 90s. Once they went digital, eventually it was like, okay, your page rate is now $20 a page. Plus they didn't have they didn't have to pay for color separations. So it all became, but that's why a lot of the Kevin Tinsley, who I worked with in the bullpen, he also colored a lot of stuff. He stopped doing it. Joe Rosas, who also worked in the bullpen but was a colorist, he matter of fact, he colored a lot of like the Jim Lee stuff. Joe Rosas was one of the first ones, like in the early 90s, to start adding some semblance of modeling to his coloring. And like Jim Lee would a lot of people would ask for Joe Rosas because they liked his coloring. But he didn't survive the transition to digital either, because the money was a lot less. And he was not particularly good at digital either, but just, when all of a sudden they want you to work for half the money.
Right. And
they're saving money. It's just like, forget it. I'll find something else to do. Picked up a few issues yesterday of Epic Comics Akira that's colored, because that's some of the first computer coloring. What's his name? It's not Steve Oliff. There's two Oliffs, right? Who's
Steve Oliff is the one that everybody knows about.
He's the Steve Oliff. There's another Oliff who drew Spider-Man and stuff. But I think Steve Oliff is the guy who did all the. He pioneered.
Steve Oliff did a lot.
He pioneered a lot of digital coloring in the late '80s before, and he did Akira that way. Fantagraphics has a sale this weekend. We spend $50 and get a $50 coupon for the future.
Yeah,
cool.
I got an email about that.
No, that's what Pat Oliff is the artist. I think he drew Untold Tales of Spider-Man. Steve Oliff is the colorist who pioneered digital coloring. Sometimes I confuse I don't even know if they're related or not.
They're not. Their last names are spelled differently.
Okay. Gotta suck it up and get the Usagi Yojimbo collection. Ooh, that's always good.
Snagged another one.
That's good. Usagi. But looking at those Neil Adams color guides was really interesting. And there was, like I said, the guy below thought these were percentages. I was like, I was going to leave him a note, then I didn't get around to it. Because it's like, no, R3 is not 30% red. It's the third value of red. Matter of fact, that was one of the, I don't know if the story is apocrypha. Steve Oliff with Ole Optics. There we go. There's his name. Spelled with no E, unlike Pat Oliff, who's got the E at the end of it. There's an apocryphal story. Like I said, I don't know. Sometimes you don't know if these stories are true or not. I've read it enough times, but I have no idea if it's true. where
So there's
I don't even remember who the color. There's, I think one of the maybe Neil Adams, one of the colorists asked, wanted to use a like really light yellow, like a 20% yellow. Would be a Y1 or whatever it is, the lightest value of yellow. But DC wouldn't let them because the separators said separators only gave them 2 values of yellow, not 3 like the other one, or something like that. And then the colorist was like, at Marvel, I do it all the time. So,
I've heard the story.
Right, whoever was at DC immediately got on the phone and it was like, he's like, how much extra do they pay for it? Nothing. Immediately got on the phone to the separator and made sure that he could use that yellow too. And from then on, DC had that yellow. Like I said, I don't know if that story is true or not, but it's a good story. My shop has a bunch of old Usagi Ujimbos on the wall. Whoa, Usagi is wall books. Wow. That's amazing. Because it used to be the only Usagi Jimbo that was worth anything was his first appearance.
How some of the older ones now really crept into value.
Yeah, I guess so. While I wasn't looking.
Yeah, if Usagi hardcover ever comes out, go ahead and grab it while you can.
Yeah. Speaking of hardcovers, that's another thing I have a note for that I noticed today. Omaha Bound. I've been like finding on Twitter these guys who sometimes clean up and bind their own comics. Like there's one guy who's been working on the Micronauts.
Yeah.
And there's this one guy who, if you go on Twitter and look up Omaha Bound, he does bound editions. I've just seen it forever and never read it. Picked up an issue Usagi, yeah. 8 Ball. About to get the new 8 Ball collection. It comes out. Yeah, I have all the issues of 8 Ball. It's one of my favorites. I get anything that Daniel Clowes does. So it's definitely, I think that collection came out in hardcover once. Now it's coming out in soft. The hardcover is long out of print and expensive, and I never got it. I might look into the soft cover. But Omaha Bound, he's doing like an edition of, usually when they bind their own comics, they get copies of the comics and, pull the staples out, pull out the ad pages or whatever. Sometimes you can see the ad pages in and bind it themselves. Yeah. There's places that'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. This guy was doing Matt Kint's Department H. I don't know if you know that series. Came out a few years ago. Yeah. I bought it. I'm a Matt Kint fan. I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But he's doing his own bound volume of it, which I assume he's got. But he's doing an edition of it. He's got like, I don't know, 10 or 20 copies of it where he's doing his own edition. And I was just like, wow, that's good. And he's going so hardcore with it. He's like I said, I don't know if this is in conjunction with Matt Kint or he's doing it on his own or whatever. Because I can't remember how many issues of Department H. It was pretty thick. It was probably about 20 issues, 25 issues, I think. So he designed the cover. He's making I don't know if they're Department H hardbacks already. But like I said, he's designing his own one. And what he did too, what's crazy, he the front cover, which is pretty thick cardboard, it looks, and he cut a hole out of the middle of the cardboard, and then put rivets around the hole, so it looks like a portal, because Department H depth all takes place underwater. Right. And I think out of the edition, he's only got 2 left, and they're $500 a piece. I'm like, woo! You got to really be a Department H fan in like sort of custom hardbound comics. But it's like, wow.
Ouch.
But I saw that and was like, wow. Back in the day, if you shot from photograph and painted art, would you still need to color separate? No. Like, how would Electra with Bill's painting get printed? Just photographed and sent to the printer? In that case, there's a, you make photo, the other separations were hand cut. You could also, like I said, you could make a separation. There was like a photo process for making separations too, which I'm not really that familiar with. It's probably in that Legion of Andy thing. But the first thing you do is get a what do they call it? A transparency made. So you'd have to get the painting, and then someone would have to, usually on a 4x5 or sometimes 8x10 camera where the negative is 8x10, you'd have to get a photograph of the painting taken. And then you'd use that photograph to, I'm not sure exactly how they did. There was a photo process where you could make the printing plates from the photograph, but it was more expensive than 4-color separations. And that's usually called full color, because you're not limited to the 64 colors or whatever it was in old comic books. I think it went up to like 128 colors by the 80s. But that's that. If you take a photograph of the painting, that was full color process. And like, that's what like Heavy Metal and Epic Illustrated and anything that was a painting did. And there was an extra cost to making the transparency too, because you had to send that out to a graphic design print shop place so they could photograph everything. Like, I think that was still in place when Marvels came around, because Marvels was did the Alex Ross stuff. I think that was pre-Digital Age, right? I think so. I don't remember working on scans.
I really don't know. Not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I don't remember seeing scans of that.
I just remember when Marvels came out, it had those clear overlays on the cover.
Acetate over. Yeah, that's why there's not many painted comics from that era. It was more expensive. It had to be. That's why I think some of the Marvel graphic novels were done that way, because they were fully painted. So, but that's why they were more expensive too.
Savage Sword of Conan usually had painted covers,
right? Because with a magazine,
usually.
With a magazine, it was kind of standard to have photo separations.
And plus, they could probably save production, money because it was, printed in black and white too.
Right. Well, I imagine it's also that I just finished reading this long Twitter essay on somebody who was talking about bureaucracies, and I forget the word he had for it, where he told a story about how bureaucracies work and how it's like it's not didn't painted comic take so long but didn't pay better. I don't think you got extra money for painting, but you got paid for coloring them. You paid for pencils, inks, and colors if you did a painted comic, but it could take you a long time.
Right.
It all depends on if you're Bill Sienkiewicz, and I don't think it took him as he had all sorts of processes. But anyway, in this, he told the story about this. How when you're dealing with a bureaucracy, you're not dealing with people, you're dealing with a system. And especially a bureaucracy like the old Soviet Union, where there was this one guy who was about to be arrested by the secret police. And if he was arrested by the secret police, he knew he was there was a good chance he wouldn't survive it. So what he did was he went out to like a jewelry store, broke into it, took some jewelry, and then waited for the cops. Then, of course, the cops arrested him, and he did 5 years for the jewelry robbery. But since the regular police were a completely different system than the secret police, and they didn't interact and didn't pay attention to each other, he didn't get arrested by the secret police and sent to a gulag, because he knew that he got. I think the magazine system might have been so different from the comic system that you were paying for full color seps no matter what, so you may as well get a painted cover.
That makes sense.
Because all magazines had full color covers, covered with photographs or paintings on them. They go all the way, to the beginning. In the beginning of magazines, they had painted covers. Then photography took over, but those were all photo separation.
I wonder if somebody did color guides for the ad pages.
Yeah, I don't know.
You imagine those Count Dante ads that were like in.
Oh yeah, for those I think there were color
red.
guides.
Yeah.
I think for those there must have been color guides.
Oh God, not this one again. Yeah.
So I imagine the magazine system was so separate from the comic system.
Could have been.
That you got to get a painting. Yeah, the painted cover not only made them look grown up, I think it was probably the only way they could do it. I mean, it was probably a good choice to do them, but it might have also been their only choice. If you had tried to get, 4 color seps done with your magazine cover, they might have been, what? Well, that's going to cost you extra. Picture color guides for Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X. Yeah, they must be nice. A lot of color guides are gone. Like I can still remember, I tell this story all the time. Paul Becton, who I mentioned before, was Marvel's in-house coloring. And he also did a lot of freelance coloring. So he colored a lot of interiors. And this is probably 1990, 1991. And they used to return, the inked pages to the artist. They also used to return the color guides to the colorist. That's probably why I have this. But I can just remember Paul Becton getting a stack of color guides, like 100 pages stack of color guides. It's probably, a month's worth of, he could probably color 100 pages in a month. And he just took them and dropped them in the garbage. Because they were valueless. He didn't have any room to keep them in his little Staten Island apartment, and nobody wanted. And I just remember going, I should have taken them out of the garbage, but if I did, I just would have ended up with stacks and stacks or stuff from my Marvel days. But I would have been overwhelmed by stuff. But it's just like, wow. I still remember. I'm just going. He's like,
yeah. Hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah. Nobody wants color guides to the 81st best-selling Marvel comic in 1990.
Well, years ago, I remember when Danny Vazzo was the colorist on Sandman. He was selling some color guides, and I wish I'd have got some of them now, but I never did. They were cheap. They were like $20, something like that.
Yeah, I got like this 8 pages for like, I don't know, between $20 and $40, but that was 15 years ago. Now they're more expensive. Now they're $20 a page. You used to be able to get a few pages or more for $20.
Yeah, I think the whole issue was like $20. But that was many years ago. So.
All those guides and even the actual plates seem like cool artifacts. Interesting how only the art in hindsight is collectible. Well, the color guides have gotten more collectible.
There are people that actually do collect some original printing plates.
Yeah, there are people who I've seen like what they call production art on sale for eBay all the time, which are old stats and things that they used to store. So that stuff's out there. Heck, Ike Promoter sold old Marvel's logos on eBay once they were digital.
Why does that not surprise me?
Plate slabbing. Slab a big metal printing plate.
Yeah, things are not light either. They're pretty heavy.
Yeah, but click on the Neil Adams Almanac and find that Neil Adams Batman coloring, because Neil Adams was really trying hard to get better coloring in comics, even to the point where he was coloring stuff himself because he didn't like the coloring.
It wouldn't surprise me. Stranko probably colored his own stuff too.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure who colored that. Shield book. And who colored? I'm not sure who colored. Could have been. I think Marie Severin was coloring the Marvel covers in the late 60s. Not 100% sure who did it. Like I said, I know George Russo's was hired sometime in the 70s specifically to color covers. It's like, I think, John Romita may have colored some covers too, because he was art director. So he could have if he wanted to. So, yeah, but I'm glad I got these because the price went up on them. And some of my friends who were colorists I know ended up selling a lot of their coloring on eBay over the years.
Mm.
Matter of fact, Scott Koblish, I just noticed, Scott Koblish is doing the secret war on weed, or I forget the name of it. I'm gonna have to look up the name of it. The Final Order. Let me see the name. If I'm gonna mention it, I may as well get the right name. I think it's something like the Secret War of Weed. But he is actually selling all the. It's coming out by Image in like a month. I think Final Order cutoff is this week. Let me see. Which I'm going to his Facebook page just to see. I know he's posted it here. Where'd it go? The Secret History of the War on Weed. Final Order cutoff 3/28. And it's in stores on 4/20. Of course.
Who'd have thunk it?
It's just a one shot. Think of some sort of crazy comedy. Secret History of the War on Weed. Right. But he's just trying something new. He's selling his original art, of course. I think maybe even through Heritage. He just did something called for Marvel called How to Read a Comic the Marvel Way. And it's all about how to read a comic, I guess. It's got all sorts of Marvel characters in it. But I think he's selling all of his artwork. He's never sold all the pages from a single issue before at the same time. Let me see if I can find where it is. Oh yeah, it's nope, is that the Secret? Final Order cutoff. Let me see if I can find it, because it was an interesting little thing he's doing, where it's like all of a sudden all the pages are available. You can get your favorite page from this book that just came out. Oh, there it's How to Read Comics the Marvel Way. It's the Heritage auction, April 7th. That'll be in. So he's selling all the artwork for How to Read Comics the Marvel Way at Heritage. I found that an interesting thing. Get the whole book or your favorite page from the book. I remember as a teen, a Punisher comic with a photo cover, random model and bandages. I always thought it was because the cover art got lost or was so late it was a deadline solution. Occasionally they liked to do photo covers. If you can remember, and I think they did one for Spider-Man, Marvel.
You have a couple of Spider-Mans that have photo covers on them.
I think Elliot Brown photographed some of those. And remember the Marvel Fumetti book?
I've seen pictures of it, but I don't have a copy of it.
Oh, I actually bought a copy. That book had the worst printing you've ever seen. Because for those who don't know what a Fumetti is, it's sort of a comic strip that you do with photographs.
No.
Yeah, the covers, the photo covers never looked as good as the regular, because the artists were more talented than the photographers and models. That's all it came down to. It's not that Elliot Brown wasn't talented; he did a good job, but the artists were just better. Like there's some photo covers nowadays that are pretty good, but they're mostly pinup covers. And they had very little control over the printing process. Like I said, a Fumetti book is you take black and white photo, usually black and white, sometimes color, and you make a comic. Each panel is a photograph. But man, was the printing bad. Whew.
Yeah, it was really grainy.
Yeah, it was tough to see anything. I have to find that. It's somewhere here. I have to find where I have it buried.
I wonder if they got that idea from National Lampoon.
Maybe. I don't know who came up with the word fumetti, but I think it sounds Italian
It's
to
an
me.
Italian word, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they came up with it in Italy and copied it here. Fumetti.
Yeah, I remember seeing photographs of that book, but I've never actually seen a copy of it.
Mm-hmm. So my comics did not come to my comic shop this week.
They go somewhere else instead?
They didn't go anywhere. Diamond just didn't deliver the indie books. The Fumetti issue would make a good look at video. Yeah, I'll have to look at that. I haven't seen it myself in years. But yeah, the some weeks occasionally, maybe once or twice at most a year, it's like they just don't get them in anything. Not one indie book came in, except for, I think it's Black Caravan and Scout are the same company. And for some reason, DC distributes them. I don't know why. So I ended up picking up 4 books, 4 #1 issues off the racks, just to give them a try. And the first is Beyond the Beyond. And I'd like to say this is the name of one of my fake comics. But I think I have another Beyond in there. So maybe my logo is better than this one.
I don't know if I like that logo or not.
I don't
like it, and I kind of don't.
I don't think it's particularly good. It just looks like a font.
Yeah.
And Sleepy Reader had this at his worst reviewed book last week, because I guess it came out not this past week, but 1 week before. And he had it at his worst reviewed book. I don't quite have it reviewed as badly. I think because he was saying that there were too many sci-fi tropes in it for him. And I just think I haven't read as much sci-fi as him. So I didn't find it as stale. But I didn't find it. I found it mid-range, because the tropes it does have is repressive society, young rebel girl who doesn't want to be part of this repressive society with all their video games and AIs and plugged into the intelligence, and some super genius guy who's running the all these planets out in space, and he appears benevolent, but he's not benevolent. So there's a lot of stuff. There really wasn't enough in here to hook me, but it was well crafted. Let me show you some of the art. Like I said, some decent art.
They really like the sound effects, don't they?
Yeah. Some real space feeling stuff. It was adequate, but not magnificent. Hey, where did my...
Makes sense.
How come my thing isn't doing anything?
Have you permanently embiggened yourself?
I think so. Doesn't seem to be anything else coming up to ensmallen me. My mouse clicking seems to be doing absolutely nothing. Let me hit escape, see what happens.
No.
Come on. Let me try plugging a mouse in. I'm using the touchpad.
I actually hate using a touchpad. I really don't like.
I'm used to it. I don't know if the touchpad just went out or it's something else. Okay, let's see. Mouse click. I got nothing. I think I'm going to have to relaunch and come back.
Okay.
Give me a minute. Let me see if I can do something, because...
So the Friar Tuck mentioned, he said, like, the Heartbeat needs more story, i.e. word balloons for his buck. Well, if you buy any Roy Thomas book, you should be in the right path there.
I cannot see if I can make the Finder quit. Oh, well, I'm going to have to restart. See you in a few minutes.
Try opening a different browser window.
The mouse won't do anything. I can't. It will move around, but it won't click. I have to do a hard restart.
I don't know if anybody else can see it, but he's completely frozen now. So if you want a nice 8x10 photograph for get his autograph on, just take a snapshot of what's on the screen right now and print it out now. Get some nice glossies. So it's just me. Yay. You should be back here in just a bit.
Okay.
The prodigal hath returned.
Whew, I had to do a hard restart to get my mouse to work. All right. I love the art, but need more story, i.e. word balloons for my buck. Oh, that's beyond the beyond. Yeah, I understand that.
You won't have a problem with Roy Thomas book, though.
Now my camera has frozen.
Uh-oh.
What is up with that? Let me hit stop cam.
I told everybody where you're frozen. If they wanted to get nice 8x10 glossies, they just take a screenshot and print them out, and you could autograph them for them.
Huh. Won't stop the cam either. Let's see.
Interesting, because it's just frozen on my end. So.
What is going on tonight?
Wonder if it's StreamYards. And I guess you're stuck with me again. So Fire Chuck says, "Don't get me wrong, need good art in the background, but needs a good story, or at least good for me as well." I mean, yeah, I mean, if you just have just good art, it can carry you so far. But if you only have a good story that will carry you, so far as well, then it's really a synthesis of both. I just noticed, Fire Chuck, what's the can in your avatar picture there? Yeah, that's true. Modern comics can get a little pricey. Well, Graphic Man, we're experiencing some pretty severe technical difficulties, so your bang for your buck is going to be a little bit less here for just a few minutes till Jared figures out what's wrong with his system.
Now Google Chrome crashed. I don't know what's up with that. All of a sudden, Google Chrome stopped working.
Well, yeah, I guess found your memory and your computer did not like you.
Yeah. Like driving a boat with no motor or oars. More bang for. Don't get me wrong, need good art. You know what it is? I think the problem with a lot of this stuff that I picked up this week, first issue. This is why sometimes I don't like first issues. Is, let's see, which one was it? Here's another terrible logo. Can you even read that one?
Broken Souls Ballad, Hell is for Kids.
You got it. That Broken Souls Ballad is
not a good logo.
Not good. And
it almost looked like broken balls, and I was like, that's not.
Once again, pretty well done art, pretty well done story. But have you ever watched? It's like you ever watched a horror film that, like, the very beginning of the film, they throw you in the middle of something scary and you don't quite know what's happening. You know, there's someone like walking down the street, and then all of a sudden they're all nervous and they're getting chased, and you see a glimpse of a mom, but you really don't know what's going on.
Right.
That's this comic. It's like the first scene in a horror movie where you really don't know what's going on. You don't know what the story is. You don't know anything, but it's a horror movie.
Right.
And that first 3-minute scene, whatever it is. This is that first 3-minute scene. And I was just like, you got to give me something. Because it's about, I don't know, these kids who are, I guess, being experimented on. And there's some real horror stuff. There's some real scary horror stuff in it, with kids being experimented on and killed, teenagers and evil doctors and giant monsters. But I don't know what any of it means. And you're probably not going to know what any of it means for a few issues in. So it's kind of like,
All right.
Yeah, 3 to 4 ball. Like, the reason I ended up buying an extra book, because of course I'm going to have to buy this week's books next week when they finally come in. So I've spent an extra $18 on these books. But I was like, it's an opportunity to try something new. Hello there, Graphic Man.
The $18 is 6 more issues of Spawn you could have bought.
Hold on. You mentioned Spawn. I'm going to have to tell you the big news this week.
Oh, God.
Right from Todd McFarlane himself.
Am I going to be sorry I brought this up? Or?
Todd McFarlane is finally coming up with a regular plan for the collected editions.
For what?
The Fluorescent Pink is horrible. Yeah, that's
not a fan of Fluorescent Pink either.
The art is pretty cool. The art is not on the cover is pretty neat. Well, that logo just ruins it. That logo is awful. You may as well have this
Yeah,
win a 10-speed bike at the top for how bad that logo is.
that logo is pretty bad.
But Todd McFarlane came with a big new. They're going to be putting out trade paperbacks, oversized hardcovers, and they already have these. I don't know if you've seen these. Like it's called the Compendium. That's like 50 issues in one. In one Spawn trade paperback giant thing, but it's because like there has been, but he came out. He's like, we finally got a plan because they've just kind of been putting out the Spawn collected editions ad hoc over the years, especially in the years no one was buying Spawn. There was no reason to come out with trade paperbacks when no one was buying it.
Right.
Those are the issues that are expensive now. So he said they're coming out with a plan. They're all going to be, the same and this and that. So I was like, oh, look at that. He's finally got a plan. Genesee Bach and a seasonal and budget-friendly beverage of New York State. Jenny Screamers.
I was asking what that can was in his avatar photo there.
Back when I was in college up in Sullivan County, those were one of the cheap local beers, and they were called Genesee Cream Ale. They were called Jenny Screamers because after you drank too much of them, you were on the toilet. They were going out the other end as you were screaming.
Wow.
He read Saga, and the Saga compendiums probably made them put out those Spawn ones. They've made.
And somewhere Gore Vidal just twinged and cringed. And
yeah, I missed Saga 57 this week. I'll have to get it next week. So. Jenny Cream Ale is a hidden gem. Like I said, I remember them from my freshman and sophomore year of college. Not that I drank them because I was never a drinker, but that was the cheap beer of choice for 18 and 19-year-olds in 1984.
In 1986, it was Milwaukee's best.
Yeah, both are from Image, and I remember like in that Spawn. And that Spawn. In that Saga book, when it came back, Saga 55, they mentioned worldwide, I think they've sold $11 million worth of Spawn collected edition. I mean, Saga collected editions. So I imagine Todd McFarlane's like, hey, why aren't we selling $11 million worth of collected editions?
So $10 million on a baseball?
But I imagine with the resurgence of Spawn in the last couple of years, it's a good time to come out with those collector editions.
I wonder if you're the person that's buying them all.
No, Spawn is selling like 100,000 copies. It's crazy. Since issue 300,
wow,
a lot of people have come back to Spawn, which is why all the issues from like 200 to 250 where nobody was buying it are expensive now. They're like $10-$20 an issue because nobody was buying them. The print run was like 10,000.
No.
And I think he made Spawn returnable, which jacked up the sales too. Because a shop can buy 100 copies of Spawn and return 90 of them if they only sell 10. No, Spawn is not really that good. I've only started buying. I've only started buying Spawn this past year. I've tried it a couple of times. I'm buying it because it's the last of the $3 comics, and I think I should support the last of the $3 comics. And it's actually gotten better. Hey, look who it is.
What's that?
It's Tim.
Who is that?
Been a while.
Yeah. I decided to jump on before I ate my Subway.
Eat your Subway while you're on. Why not?
Well, that's just rude.
Nah.
Is the Spawn story really that good? What?
That's the question. My answer was no, it's not.
Tim, just for curiosity's sake, do you have a Jersey Mike's in your area?
No. Where I have moved to, the good thing about I can say about traveling for my job is I do get to go to better restaurants
Right.
when I'm like away from here. There ain't shit in Tazewell, Virginia. So I pick Subway out of everything they have here. That should say anything. Jersey Mike's, Firehouse, and Jimmy John. Oh, Jimmy John. Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, Jimmy John's is another. And
Jimmy John's. Yeah, Jimmy John's is my favorite out of all those.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But the regular Spawn series has gotten better the last few issues because Todd McFarlane stopped writing it. Todd McFarlane's just not a good writer.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, I will not put down Todd McFarlane for being not a good writer, because if you go back and read the letter column when he got his own Spider-Man series, he was begging people to tell him how to improve. Yeah. It's like he acknowledged, I know I'm not. He's a good idea guy. I mean,
what kills me after 300 issues, he makes English 101 mistakes.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Like don't use the same word twice in two sentences. Like the environment was awesome. It was an awesome environment. Like he does stuff like that I'm just like, what do you find? Use your thesaurus. Find another word for awesome. You don't have to use it twice in a row.
I tell you what, I've jumped on here in the right night, apparently. Because I've got an Alan Moore story that has pissed me off so bad. I'm thinking about making a rant video on it just to get it off my chest so I can function. So if we're going to be talking about bad writing or whatever, this could be the time.
Hello.
Paolo's here. Look what we got. Tim just showed up, Paulo.
You just showed up. This is amazing. we got the Four Stooges.
Yeah. We had one stooge.
Which one of us is Shemp?
I am not Shemp. I'm putting my foot down. Okay.
Well, I don't care about the Stooges. They're not famous here. Even Jerry Lewis is better known here.
That's sad.
I'm Mo.
But what started this Spawn conversation, besides Scott, in case you don't know, Scott now measures money, especially money spent on comic books, in issues of Spawn.
Anytime Jared brings up how much money he spent, I figure out the conversion rate to an
in Spawn issue, because for the last year I've been buying Spawn just because it's the last $2.99 comic, and I feel I should support it. And so Scott's always going, so far you've spent $36 on Spawn, huh? And he just went, oh, that's. I spent $18 on this week's comic book. That's 6 issues of Spawn right there, which got me Todd McFarlane's big announcement that they finally have a plan for the Spawn collected editions.
Oh, right, because they can't use Angel anymore.
Well, no, it's in that they always kind of printed them ad hoc, just whatever. Some of them haven't even been collected in collected editions. So they finally come up with a plan for the different formats and a schedule for actually printing the collected edition. So if you're a Spawn fan and want to buy collected editions,
it's Image. Don't fall for it. There's no such thing as a schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 years of Image. We should know better. Like it's not to be a surprise when they try.
Well, it's better with books that are already completed. It's like 1 a.m. in Portugal.
Yeah, no, it's 11 p.m.
Here's the one Image trade that I want, and I heard it exists, but I don't know. You know, I've tried to look it up years ago, but it was the second half of the Savage Dragon, the Savage World series, where he gives it like a tribute to Commander. It led up to issue 99 or 100. I got the first half. I've got scattered issues to finish out, kind of reading it. But the second half of the trade never. I just got this one Savage Dragon trade on the shelf.
It may have come out when he's been.
Right. See, I think it's
Well, I never bought any of the Savage. I have all the issues. I never bought the collected editions, but I know his collected editions kind of come out and go out of print really quickly.
Yeah, I think it's like a unicorn. I've been told it exists. I've been told it doesn't exist.
I imagine if you're collecting Spawn trade paperback, Spawn Savage Dragon in trade paperback form, you don't get rid of them. It's one of those books. There's no extra copies for fans to stumble onto. And like, because I think he's put them out in like essential editions too, like in black and white.
Yeah, I have the first 2 of those. I ordered the third, then it didn't come out when it was supposed to, and I didn't reorder it. I think there are 6 now.
Okay.
I mean, I know he does a lot of stuff in Savage Dragon. Very versatile book. Different. You could skip ahead. I mean, you know better than I do. You could skip ahead 10 issues, and it's a completely different tone to the book.
Right.
But the thing that was so cool about that Savage Land is that he followed the Kirby formula, where you would get the double page splash.
Oh
pages. Yeah. He followed the formula that Kirby did in Commandy, and I love that.
He changed his storytelling kind of permanently after that.
Okay.
In that, because he's always been a Kirby guy, but I would say his stuff, like at Marvel and his Savage Dragon stuff, was more the storytelling was what I now call the image pinup style, where I didn't really notice it when it was. Well, I noticed the storytelling was different, and I didn't like it so much. Like all Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, all those guys at that time period, they were doing this storytelling that was based around big shots. So it was kind of like, and I only noticed this like 5 years ago, going back and reading stuff, where I knew to me back then it was just like pinups they were doing. They were just drawing pinups. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at it like 20 years later, I saw that they actually built the storytelling around those pinups. Yeah. They built this, so it was like the whole flow kind of went through those pinups, and I appreciated it. And kind of that's how he took. But then when he did that Savage World, he completely went Kirby, and he's been more Kirby than Image since then.
The thing was that in my opinion, Eric Larson. Not that I'm the Eric Larson expert, but he's had 2 stories where I think it was like prime Eric Larson, where he really went above and beyond. Mm-hmm. And it'd be like essential reading if you were Eric Larson. Okay. Right. It's that Savage Land that he did, because like his art blew up in that. He
even went to the Kirby 6 panels a page at times.
And so it showed that he's got it. Whatever, he's got that X factor. You know what I mean? He got it. Right. It was really impressive. But the other thing he did, and I was actually going to try to look it up before I said this, was when Todd McFarlane left that Spider-Man title, just the normal Spider-Man.
Right.
Eric Larson came on there, and I don't know if there was a story in between when McFarlane left and Larson, or if Larson followed up. But he had this story where he brought in like Ghost Rider and the Hulk and Spider-Man and everything. And it was some of his best artwork. He actually had like cross hatching in it and stuff. I mean, like he knocked it out of the ballpark with that. And I've never thought he topped those 2 stories, even art-wise. I'm the guy that's got his Doom Patrol stuff when he first started out.
I was never a fan of his Spider-Man back in the day. I only started reading his Savage Dragon like 60. I think I started buying it regularly with that Savage World story, which was the perfect place to start for me.
See, I was the other way around. I was with Savage Dragon 3-issue miniseries. He said new number 1 will be a while.
Right.
Well, I think he ran off and got married or something. When you open up that first issue of Savage Dragon, which this was the cover, you open it up and it has an editorial where he says, "I told you it'd take a little while." Yeah.
The only reason I started buying Savage Dragon is because it was Chris Gerusso's favorite book for years. And he'd always be like, the first thing he'd read is and I read a couple issues and was like, whatever. And then finally I was like, you know what? He's been talking about this book and loving it for 3-4 years now, 5 years even, because I'm like, I may as well just start reading it to see. I'm like, there's got to be something there if this has been his favorite book for 5 years. And like I started right around issue 70 with that Savage World. And like, perfect place to start for me, because he started over new even. Yeah. So that was, and I've been with it ever since. I even went back, got the first issue. at some point. But yeah,
Yeah.
good. Like to me, Eric Larson and the Savage Dragon is like a lifetime Oscar achievement book. In terms of he's never Savage Dragon has never been like the best comic of the year. Like if you were to make your top 10 comics of the year, maybe there'd be a Savage Dragon in there.
Has he hit 300 yet? Because I know we've had this conversation.
No, he's on 260 something.
Yeah.
But if you sit down and read a lot of Savage Dragon, it's been so good for so long. That's like nobody has had like that good a comic for that long. And it's good because he keeps changing it. Mm-hmm. He makes permanent changes in it all the time. Like the Savage World storyline we're talking about, he blew up Savage Dragon's world. It was gone. And it never came back.
Yeah.
He ended up living in some alternate universe, but the world he actually came from, gone. I think that happened at least twice.
Yeah, but he did it in story. That's what makes it so cool.
Right.
You were on the journey with him. He just didn't do it as a stunt. You know,
no. Savage Dragon failed and got the whole world blown up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric Larson's a weird dude. I mean, I've been around him at Heroes Con, and it's my job. My social work job makes you a little sensitive.
Right.
And my bells and whistles were going off like, just move on, Tim. But the fact is I think we talked about the 300 Club, like Cerebus did 300. Right. You know, same guy doing all the books and all that stuff. Right. I got a problem with Spawn doing it because of considering that. I mean, I know it's an indie book, but McFarlane didn't write and draw every issue. You know what I mean?
The only reason I'm like, the reason I admire Spawn, and I can count it as a different. Him celebrating 300 issues is fine with me.
Yeah, it's cool, but not prestige.
Cool. To me, it's different, but it's certain. What I say about Spawn is Spawn. The reason I give McFarlane's credit, even if he didn't draw every issue, is that book only exists because he wants it to. Mm-hmm. That's my take on Spawn. Most people would have given up on Spawn. Your average art would have gone, I got 200 issues out of it. It's only selling 5,000 copies now. I'm done with it. I don't want to bother with it anymore. I got toys. I got this. I got that. But no, he kept it going.
This is such a weird week because my buddy Anderson called me last night, and he was talking about Spawn in those. He actually gave me the numbers in the series that have real low print runs and that they're worth a lot. We were talking about Spawn #1 being a hot book, and I'm like, there was a million of them. And then he's like, this is weird. Images come up a lot this week.
Like Spawn from 200 to 250 or something like that. It's like no one was buying them. So there were like that's
I wonder if back issues of Grendel are going to start going up now.
Yeah, good question.
I found out. Yeah, I got 3 through 12. I had scattered issues, and that's one of the things I jumped on here for. I'm starting to see, and this stuff is regional. This is not. I'm not saying nationwide. I'm not saying worldwide. But I'm running across in the last month. I'm running across a lot of booths in antique shops or little indoor flea markets and stuff. People are trying to get out. I got a bunch of Grendels for 50 cents a piece, and they're still sitting there when I go back.
Are you buying the Kamiko issues? Here's the thing, because here's the thing.
I have finally found out it is called Kamiko.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard mixed reviews from,
Yeah,
I never get to be right, but I'm like,
because the Dark Horse reprints actually have better coloring. And they look better, and all of the trade paperbacks are based on the Dark Horse editions.
I have pre-ordered. I don't know if it's out yet or not, but I pre-ordered the omnibus that's coming out where they're doing the stories in chronological order.
Oh yeah,
okay. And I think Paulo and I were on Graphic Man or something. I think we talked about it for a minute about. Does that mean as they came out or story-wise? I don't know. So I'm determined to find out why Grendel has kept a cult following because I never got it. I have 3 through 12. I could run downstairs and get them. But I found it for like 50 cents a piece. And they're like, they open the bill. Like they count.
Mm-hmm. Well, the original omnibus editions, they're themed. The first omnibus features all of the Hunter Rose stories. So you have Devil by the Deed, and then you have the red, white, and black, white, and red editions, all in the same volume. The second volume features Christine Spar and the Brian Lee Song stories, which go from 1 to 15.
The ones he just got, the Christine Spar ones,
Yeah.
3 through 12.
And
I like the coloring on those ones. And the original Devil by the Deed had better coloring than the Dark Horse coloring.
I thought I had it up here, but I think Devil by the Deed is the one where he retold the origin of Hunter Rose, right? And it was like
it's not just the origin; it's the beginning and the end.
Okay.
The Devil by the Deed is its own.
Yeah.
And to give you a spoiler, Grendel dies at the end of his first graphic novel, and so it's kind of like they've been telling all these Hunter Rose stories for years, but you know the ending. He eventually. So that one slim volume had like the origin and death of Grendel in it.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to give credit where it's credit's due because he survived since 1982 and still has some of the same fans from 1982. I couldn't get through Devil by the Deed. I made it 4 pages, and I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I'm just not. Maybe I don't. I always feel like I can at least appreciate something even if it's not grabbing me. But I'm not seeing.
Which Devil by the Deed do you have too? Which one?
That's what I was going to pull up and see, but I'm pretty sure it's the Dark Horse one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like the coloring in the Dark Horse one as much. The mood isn't as good, but just keep reading it. It's good stuff.
I'm gonna give it another shot.
It's short anyway. It's it's like
but that's what I mean. But I'm glad that the thing about it is the Comico issues that I have are like they got some Mage backup stories, and Matt Wagner is pulling. It felt a little bit Frank Miller inspired, but I like some of the techniques and the storytelling and the art. But I can't tell you what the stories were about, So
that just reminds me to bring it back to Eric Larson for a moment. He's doing this new book, Ant. And he's changed his drawing style for that a little bit too. He's going for this more open, and it reminds me of Frank Miller's Sin City stuff a little bit. But
Crack's reading a great book. I'm determined to get every issue of that. I can't believe I didn't get onto that one.
Good one.
Well, I've got the Sandman Mystery Theater graphic novel that came out where he met Neil Gaiman's Sandman. I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's not as grandiose as you think, and stuff like that. And I was like, how have I been missing this book? And then it was just impossible to find. Then it crossed over with Starman, and I'm like, motherfucker, like that's 2. I'm like, it's 2. And I've gotten random issues in the first trade. I probably have like 15, 16. I don't know.
That's a really good book.
It's fantastic. Guy Davis doing that artwork on it. It's 1930s pulp, and he's going up against serial killers and cults. And I mean, it's not superhero stuff at all, which is why I stayed away from it. Thinking
that's a crying shame that Guy Davis left the comics industry.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Paulo is here because I got a feeling he may know something about this. But much like Grendel, it had its fan following. I've heard about Alan Moore's Halo Jones.
Oh yeah,
for decades, right? And I tried not to let it get all hyped up in my head. And I'm like, this has got to be. I'm going to be cussing. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, I can feel it that it's going to slip. Right, I'm just going to own it. Right. But I'm like, I've read the first 2 of the 3 books, and I know he had 9 books in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, is this a fucking joke?
I have to tell you, I read
Halo
Jones. I took it out of the library. I think it was last year for the first time. I don't even remember it. I don't think I made it all the way through. I don't remember it. I was just like, I know people who love it, and I was just like, okay.
Don't buy it. This is the first book I'm telling people don't buy it. Don't waste your money.
Take it out of the library like I did.
Do something, borrow one. If you like it, good. And then you can.
I don't remember it. It's like 6 months later. I have no idea what it was about. I just remember reading it going, okay.
Okay.
Put it down. I think I returned it before I finished it.
it's the kind of thing that I forced myself to finish it because I'm like, maybe it's going somewhere. I read the first 2 books. There's 3, and supposedly there was going to be 9. So I found myself going through the stages of this denial of how bad this is. Right. First, I'm like trying to give him some credit. Oh, he's world building, or he's going to come back to this if he was finishing the book. No, it's all bullshit. Okay. And then it's like Halo Jones. I don't know how she got so popular. It's got Neil Gaiman sitting here saying this is fantastic, and on the inside of it, it's got these reviews of it's great. Yeah. Nothing fucking happens. Halo Jones doesn't solve a murder. She doesn't do anything. It's like she's so vanilla. It's like you can project. She's shallow and has no personality and does nothing.
I think I picked up from the library Halo Jones and the Bo Jeffries saga.
Who writes Bo Jeffries?
That's Alan Moore also. And I think it was is that from 2000 AD, Bo Jeffries saga? It's another one from the same time period.
Okay, I know the Ballad of Halo Jones, which is what this called, he actually puts in there in an editorial that he did it because it was 2000 AD and 82, 83 was all Judge Dredd and Scrotium Dog and just big guys out there raising hell and all this stuff. So he figured he wanted to do something a little different, So you get 5 pages of a breather in between the real stories is how I'm picturing it. So
Halo's getting a big reprint soon, isn't it? Yeah. I think so. Wow. I have most of the reprints, but still, Bo Jeffries. See, I found Bo Jeffries okay. It just wasn't. It was like a bunch of monsters living in London, and I read it all the way through. It was okay, but not really my thing. Just didn't strike me. But I know people who love it too. So
when I was through reading Halo Jones, it had one interesting character. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. One interesting character. I even started getting online, trying to figure out maybe I missed something to see what people talk about it and stuff and everything. And I found was one review where the guy was like, "This is shit. Don't buy it." And then one person in the comments was trying to take out for it, going, "But she's a girl and she has friends she talks to, and they go shopping." And I'm like, "This bitch did not read anything in that." I was like, "You didn't read the book. Shut up." Because when they go, every time you think something means something, it means nothing. They had one interesting character named Glyph. You might remember her. And apparently she can't remember if she started out as a boy or a girl because they have a machine in the future that can change you however you want. And she changed herself 47 times or something, and she can't remember what she was. So she's now a non-entity, and people forget she's in the room while she's talking to them. It's like she's invisible. And I was like, there's the story I want. That's the picture this should be about.
I really don't remember anything about Halo Jones. I'll probably pick it up and read it sometime like I've never read it before.
I thought I gave the first book a little bit of a break because I thought, oh, it's world building.
Yeah, that's all I read was the first one.
You get to see the hoop and nobody has a job and they're trapped underground. They never see the sun. To go shopping, it's like you're going into a Mad Max movie, but you see nothing. It's all tell and it's all tell, no show. And then when you think she's world building, she just leaves the place. Like it was that easy. And I'm like, well, maybe he's going to come back to it in the future. No, there was a murder. Halo Jones doesn't even solve the murder. It solves itself. The guy the person who did the killing in the second book told on himself. You're just sort of like, nothing is happening. So here's the real pisser. This is when I finally went over the edge. So while I was doing my type in and trying to see if I missed something here, trying to have people defend the book, I found a video I found there's a band called Transvision Vamp in the late 80s and early 90s. Wendy James is still around. She wrote a damn song called Hanging Out with Halo Jones. I'm like, what the fuck? A pop band in the 80s wrote a song about hanging out with Halo Jones. I'm like, what am I missing?
Well, Tim, you do realize that Elton John wrote a song about Dan Dare, right?
No, I did not know that.
Yep, sure did.
Or at least Bernie Taupin did.
This is an interesting week.
Fair enough.
Images popping back up. Eric Larson's and Alan Moore story is horrible. And now I find out that Elton John's wrote a little bit more sci-fi past Rocket Man. That's awesome. Yeah.
There you go.
Something I reread this week, so I knew I'd like it. Wimbledon Green. by Seth. I reread one of my favorites of all time. It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken. Last week or the week before, I can't remember. If I talked to Paulo about it or Scott and Paulo. But I decided to reread this one too, and this one's just a lot of fun. Wimbledon Green.
I always thought that cover should make for a Monopoly piece.
This is one of his sketchbook graphic novels. Like, he just kind of draws the pages in his sketchbook, so they're not as refined as his other stuff, but it's still pretty refined. I mean, they're not sketches, but it's just, if you see, there's these little postage stamp panels, and it's all a story that takes place. It's a story about famous Canadian comic book collectors. Wimbledon Green being one of the. So it's just like this really fun, especially if you're a comic book collector, as we all are. Right. This really fun story about these millionaires who fly around the world and compete with each other to collect the best comic books. And Wimbledon Green is one of the foremost experts on comic books. And he just has these little, he just has all these crazy characters in there. And sometimes there's just, 2 or 3 pages of the character, one of these crazy characters telling you a story about one of the other crazy characters. So it's just a fun stuff. And they give you little, I love these pages too, where they give you little glimpses of the covers of all the fake comic books he's chasing. Patty Pigtails #1, Mint, 1956, irritating girls comic. All Bedtime #5, Near Mint, 1958. What do we get? Saturn Sally Summer Special #1, Mint, Racy, Scarce. Mr. Meteor, #22, Mint, Origin of Kid Sidekick Fireball. So I just love all those little details he puts in. Right. And there's he puts all the crazy little. They form some comic book club, which Wimbledon Green is never allowed in because one of the other members keeps blackballing them. And there's even a mystery to who Wimbledon Green really is, because there was this collector, I don't know what his name is, Dan Green in the 70s, who Wimbledon Green says he is, but there are people who knew Dan Green and swear that he's not one. So it's he makes all these little fun stories and mysteries and characters about comic book collecting in this one. So it's definitely one to check out if you like that sort of stuff, and who wouldn't? Nice. Oh, here's where he gives you a sample comic book of this famous comic book called Fine and Dandy, with these 2 hobos in the 1950s, one named Fine and the other Dandy, and it just gives you the history of the comic, and it's just fun. If you like comic and comic history, even if it's fake, check out Wimbledon Green.
Well, I found out some interesting random comic book history that'll never be on Jeopardy or anything, but I kind of laughed. Did you guys ever watch in reruns The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis?
No, nope. Never have.
I've seen a few episodes, but not too many.
Yeah. It's a TV show that ran from 1959 to I don't know, 1960, 4 years, whatever. And he broke the 4th wall. Dobie Gillis was just a 17-year-old kid,
right?
Got a girl crazy, and the show had an extra layer, and it had Bob Denver on it as a beatnik. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it would open up and you'd see a big statue in the park of the thanking man. And then it would pan down and Dobie Gillis would be thanking. And then he'd look at the camera and tell you what was on his mind. And that was the plot for the show. I mean, it was actually kind of cool. Yeah. The Dobie Gillis, Tuesday Weld, Warren Beatty was on it for the first half year and stuff. Right. But the main 4 characters, Zelda, Dobie, Bob Denver, and all that stuff, they inspired the Scooby-Doo crew. Scooby-Doo. That's where you got Daphne, Freddie was Dobie. Daphne was Tuesday Weld, Velma was Zelda, and then Shaggy was Bob Denver.
I can see that.
Well, they made a comic book of The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis, and I always sort of wanted them, right? But these comic books are from 1960 to 62 or something, right? Turns out DC in the late 60s, when they lost the license or whatever happened, they took those books about 7 years later, adjusted the art, and reprinted them as Wendy and Willie, a couple of hippies. And I found some of those, and I could see where they like
Wow.
drew long hair and beads and stuff on the same art. I was like,
Only
oh
got-
my God.
Friar Tuck has some Halo Jones in his.
Don't buy it. I mean, this is one
Never-
time I'm telling
I wonder
people.
where that robot.
Never even seen an issue.
Mhm.
it-
In the
it just-
meantime,
I do want to read DR and Quench though.
I have the Iron Quench.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Reading? Okay.
I had the I don't know what company. It was either Quality or Image, not Image, Quality or Eagle when they did the reprints in America and 4-issue miniseries arcs. I got quite a bit of the art and Quench that way. And then there was like this evil book, evil story that Pat Mills and Denny O'Neil did, I think. Or wait a minute, Kevin O'Neil, the guy that did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's like they get into some like occult freaking demon stuff with some of their characters and stuff. And it was like
Nemesis the Warlock.
that's it, man. I read some of that stuff and I had to like turn on the light and turn it down and try to figure out if I need to go to church in the morning. I'm like, oh my, you know.
That thing is probably the best thing that came out of 2080.
Yeah, I mean you don't forget it. You know what I mean? Like you do not forget it.
I have 4 cats and previously had others. Only the most recent has attacked some of my books. European side chef now has all the books pierced. He's nicknamed the terrorist. Oh,
Well,
cat
this is-
destroying your books.
This is Shiva the Destroyer. I named her that from the get-go. We've had some moments, but we're thinking about getting her a friend. We think she's having a lot of separation anxiety. That's
okay.
why she, has been hanging out. Yeah.
If you have 1 cat, you may as well have 2.
Well, I wanted to get 2 to begin with, but this was a rescue. My wife actually found her on the side of the 4-lane as a kitten, and it looked like she either got caught in the wheel of a car or something and fell out doing 60 miles, 65 miles per hour, or the vet thinks somebody threw her out the window. So her face was all scraped up. She was a kitten. My wife rescued her.
That was a
And I,
literal
of course,
rescue.
I, of course, said we can't keep her. Don't get attached.
The other of my 4 first issues I got this week. In case you guys missed the beginning of the story, none of my comics made it to the comic shop this week. Diamond just didn't deliver the indie comics. So I picked up 4 first issue indie comics that I found lying around. And a couple of them I think were new this week because Black Caravan and Scout Comics, for some reason, are distributed by DC. So they got in. But this one is The Rad Wraith. And I think Black Caravan is Scout's horror imprint. Another not very good logo. Why is it balancing on his head? It's
not a good logo. And it's not a good title either.
No.
Yeah, they should hire you to do the logo.
Nice cover though. Now they probably don't pay that much. But it's a horror book. It's about this little kid who meets up with these hoodlums who he kind of wants to join their skate crew. So they make him skate this half pipe in the cemetery. And some of the hoodlums are like, he can't do that. That old thing is rotted. He can't do it. So he's like, no, I can't do it. I chicken out. So the one hoodlum pushes him down. And look at this shot of his face hitting. So they're like, oh my God, you killed him. But then he wakes up the next morning, this little kid, and he's fine and doesn't know what happened. But then you get the feeling that something weird is happening. There's this crazy wraith shadow on him. And then this wraith shows up to challenge the other guys to skate matches. Or it's just like, and then it just kind of ends.
It's like one of those movies they show at like 2 a.m. when nothing else is on.
It really was kind of cool, but and here's the rad wraith showing up at the end. He's like, yeah, man, I'm going to skate. Like, and that's where I'm just here to collect. And you're like, okay, what's he going to collect? And there's nothing more. And you're like, that was the end? So it wasn't terrible, but it's just another example of a comic that wasn't made as a single issue comic, I don't think. I enjoyed it, but was like, I really need more because we already had this one. I think you guys missed this. Another Broken Souls Ballad, which I described as, have you ever seen a horror movie where they throw the first scene of a horror movie is somebody's running from something horrible and a monster, and it's it's a scary 5-minute scene, but you really don't know what's going on yet because it's just the beginning of the movie and they threw you in the middle of it. They did the same thing with Broken Souls Ballad. So my theme for these first issues is they didn't really give me a lot. I like first issues that hook me.
Well, as a guy who was a skater for about a summer back in the late 80s and hung out with the skaters, and it's put it this way, my skateboard, I ended up like putting in the river. They're a bunch of losers. So I would expect a lot from that if that guy's actually part of that skating community. They're not all sponsored in the Olympics. I'll tell you that.
Right.
But
it wasn't even bad. It was, like I said, it was pretty well done for what was there.
Yeah.
It left me wanting more, but not in a good way, kind of.
Well, the thing about it is, though, is that like I would be interested in like interviewing the guy that did it legitimately. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go back to the term that they had back then to see if he's a real skater or a poser.
That have been addicted to skateboarding videos lately. Andy. Well, then check out Rad Wraith. Like I said, that the part where the kid bashed his face in was really well done.
Well, was it better, equal to, or less than Skate Man by Neil Adams? Seriously.
Better than, well, it's tough to say better than Skate.
No, it's not.
When I was looking for a random comic, I ran across one of my issues of Skate Man over there. Skate Man is legendarily bad, so bad it's good comics. This isn't so bad.
Really bad. Yeah.
This isn't.
Let me tell you something. That picture you just showed, I'm going to name one guy. I mean, he lives in town. He's a town over now and stuff, and he has affairs with me. Well, I'm not going to say his name. I know the dirt on him. But he has affairs with men that he meets online behind his wife's back. So just saying. But he spent 3 weeks trying to get me to fight him in high school. And then after I finally beat him up, one of his buddies, another one of the, it's like when you leave, they don't let you go. It's like the mob or something. You got to pay. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I just left everybody. And I was like, I'm not a skater anymore. You guys go away and all this stuff, right? And then like the second guy decided that he was going to, I guess, take up for him. And knowing what I know about him now, this kind of makes sense. There was probably something going on, seriously, with them both. And he came after me, and it took him 2 weeks to get me to finally fight him and ended up beating him up. The coach in school had a problem with me because I was so little. I was like 110. I was seriously the 90-pound weakling. But I had, I was 110 pounds with bullet. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So when the coach broke up both of my fights in gym, all of a sudden he liked me, and I didn't have to dress out for gym if I didn't want to for the rest of the year. So yeah, I got a thing about skaters, man. I was in, and I got out, and if a guy's making a comic book about it, good for him.
There's you wanting, there's leaving you wanting more in a good way and leaving you wanting more in a bad way.
Well, Skate Man had a mask. That's all I'm saying. Huh? Go ahead, Scott.
I like driving by a car accident.
I don't want any more of that. I can't. Right. Skate Man was more of a car accident. Like this wasn't bad. It was actually pretty well done. There just wasn't enough of it to hook me.
I'm telling you what, man. Neil Adams can draw the hell out of a scarf around your head. Okay, I mean. That was Skate Man's best asset. That red Iron Fist mask on his head.
His arch enemy was the Blind Alley, which he ran into. He ran into 2 blind alleys accidentally in one issue. Oh no, Blind Alley! Has anyone read Rick Remender's Blackheart Billy?
Never have.
Nope.
I don't know. I've never read that one.
All right. So for real quick, I'm going to show 1 or 2 things here. This right here is not a big deal. It is the first appearance of Speedball. You know what I mean? John Romita cover and all that stuff, a Steve Ditko creation.
Right.
And I have 2 other ones, but I can never find a decent copy. I got home with the first one, and it was like water damaged, right? And then I found another one, 50 cents. And the only thing wrong with it is that you can tell it was on the rack, and somebody was doing the thing where, how they pick
Yeah,
their fingers.
yeah.
That's about it. But this was one that made me real happy, and I do recommend this just for the art. I don't know about the story, okay, but it's been a while. But back in what was it, 94 or something like that, Malibu came out with a whole bunch of titles under the Bravura line. I finally got Dan Brereton's Nocturnals.
Ah, okay.
And everything that he paints is amazing, man. I like
Yeah.
how he understands the color palette of like the late 60s, around the time where you had had Manos Hands of Fate in the drive-in, and you would have Creepy and Eerie magazines and stuff like that. And it looks like the old pulps with his art style.
Yeah.
So I finally got the 6 issues, and I think he came out with an omnibus of all this. But what I get out of this is like, this is a world where it's like Halloween all year long.
I've never read it. I don't
He's
think I've
got
ever seen it.
He's got 2 characters that are real popular. I can't think of the girl right now.
I
But
may
he's
have
got-
seen some in Dark Horse Presents, one of the later volumes.
Well, there's a character on Batman Beyond, part of the Joker gang, who carried a
Mhm.
jack-o'-lantern. I was convinced he was the gun witch out of this. There's
Ah.
like, he's like a warlock with a witch's hat, and he's got like a scarecrow face, but he's the gun witch and stuff. I mean, they're all based on monsters and stuff.
I'd just like to say to Comic Crack here that Skate Man was a street skater. Small pebbles wouldn't do him any harm. He'd be able to handle that.
His mortal enemy,
Blind alley
the
on it.
manhole.
Yeah, out of this book, I think that was like the breakout character, at least in the 90s, whoever she was. I can't
Comic
remember.
Crack wants to see some of the interiors.
Okay.
I'd make you bigger, but last time I did that when just Scott was here, it somehow froze my whole everything.
He always reminded me of like Mike Mignola crossed with Tim Bradstreet.
Well, I've got Darren Brereton stuff scattered around. I've got some prestige format miniseries, which was his first published work. I can't remember what it is. It's like it's called like the Psycho or something. But I mean, a lot of and Dan Brereton actually, I didn't want to hurt
Open for a second.
feelings, but I was online somewhere, maybe it was Facebook, and I posted a picture of finding a Nocturnals book later on, like a trade or something. And I was real happy with it. Said I couldn't get this in my comic book shop back in the day, and I found it. And luckily, I didn't say I found it for $1 because he popped up. He was like, "Why couldn't?" He was like, "Why?" I'm picturing how he said it. He was like, "Why couldn't you find it in the comic book shop?" And I didn't want to hurt his feelings and go down this rabbit hole with him and say I found this for $1. So I said it went out of business. You know, I was like, I lied to Dan Brereton to save his feelings. But this is the Gun Witch.
Flip it open for a second. Let's see the
Yeah,
interior.
Here we go. This is a good page.
Oh, nice. I know I have some of his work, but I can't remember what I have of his.
Here's another one. Well, what I have of his stuff is, I mean, I love what he's done. I have the Batman Thrill Killer with Howard Chaykin miniseries that he's done. I've got an issue. He did the last chapter, an oversized issue of Punisher back in the day when he had Frankencastle.
Right.
I mean, I just got his stuff scattered through there. I got a bunch of covers by him, like on stuff like Legion 92 and stuff like that. You know, he did
I think he was in either volume 2 or 3 of Dark Horse Presents.
Yeah. But like I said, I didn't realize how much of it's, and I've got this 6-issue miniseries that he did called Giant Killer, and I haven't read it yet. I end up looking at his work and not reading the story, but it's basically in Japan, and it's sort of inspired by like Ultraman and Spectre Man, but he grows, you know, he fights gigantic kaiju monsters and stuff, and it's called Giant Killer. And he has like the cover. It's an American comic, but he had the cover like with Japanese writing on it and stuff. Give it a feel. Really good stuff.
Has he done anything in the past couple of years?
I'm not sure, man, but when I look at these, you could have ordered T-shirts of the Nocturnals back in the day. I'm not sure. I find some of those. But I mean, I recommend Dan Brereton because of his art style, and it's very retro horror. You know, I can see him doing like a Misfits cover, if you know the Misfits and stuff like that. You know, very B movie, pulp inspired, creepy Warren Harvey stuff, magazine stuff. Is what it feels like.
The last comic I got this week is Cities of Magic, where I like this cover, but I think I like the well, the insider is, once again, it didn't give me enough to hook me. It's got some nice interior art, except for the pages that are overly brown, and it takes place in the present day, I think, but it said 150 years ago, all of a sudden magic was discovered. and it changed the world because like science didn't progress because magic was discovered and they discovered how to do things with magic. And now there's, it takes place in the US where there's like, people from Chicago, magicians were fighting. We're trying to conquer, I don't know, people in, I think it was Louisiana. But there's like bizarre things in it. Like New York City is called Old York City. Now, I can't imagine any circumstances in which it's amazing sometimes the things you won't buy when you read fantasy and fiction. I can buy the magic crap. Okay, magic was invented. But why in a million years would New York City be called Old York City? Because it's named after York.
Maybe it got some British influence that didn't like it and decided, hey, we're going to name it after the British.
Wouldn't the one in Britain be Old York City? And it just makes no sense that it'd be called Old York City. But and of course we get introduced to the much like I was complaining about the cliche in Beyond the Beyond, where there's the young feisty one who doesn't want anything to do with the system. And this we have a young feisty, I don't know if it's a man or a woman. Looks like a dude. The other one was a young feisty dude who wants nothing to do with magic. He's into science. And he gets caught in the middle of this battle and poisoned, I think. But it was okay. It was I think that what is it? What's the furthest place from here? That did like a 60-page first issue. Mm. I think a lot of comics should think about a lot of indie comics especially should think about doing that. Because $5 this was for probably about, I don't know, 25 pages of story, but not enough story to get me hooked. It's just kind of like, okay, it's the beginning of if I read a trade paperback of this, I might get hooked, but one issue doesn't hook me. That was the story of all 4 of these first issues I got this week. They seemed all right, but not one of them hooked me because there wasn't enough in it to hook me.
Right.
Howler, I forgot if you were a Legion fan. Volume 2 of the Legion Silver Age Omnibus Editions is out of print. Hoping for a reprint. Back issue's expensive too.
Yeah.
Too expensive.
Yeah, I think, believe it or not, I'm going to have to go look and make sure we're talking about the same thing. I might be thinking about those archive editions. But believe it or not, I found those at Ollie's back in 2018, an outlet store. And hopefully I did pick up the ones you're talking about. But yeah.
The omnibuses are different than the archives, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was. It's been a little bit. So I figured out how I missed this back in 1995.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
There you get.
The Shadow and Doc Savage.
Yeah, 2-issue miniseries that came out in 1995 through Dark Horse. I've never heard of this. And then I was like, how did I miss this? And I realized this was the year, or maybe it was maybe the end of December of 94, that the local comic book shop that we had where I was living at went out of business. He just stayed open for a year. And he was like, I like my teaching job better. I can't keep traveling and doing a comic book shop. So he wrote this open letter apologizing to all of us. So this came out probably right when he closed the shop out. So I got to find number 1. And I got a kick out of it. If you like Doc Savage and Shadow, this is a Doc Savage and Shadow story. And there's a 2-page spread where they finally go at it.
Wow. I'd say one of the reasons I have so many I've been able to have so many indie comics is I've had 2 comic shops my whole life. One from like 84 to 99 and one from like 99 to now where I've had a pull list. So that like has made me not miss stuff in general.
But I'm going to say something about American Splendor. Like I showed this off because it's got a Roger Corman in the art with Harvey Pekar.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've gotten to be able to read a lot of Harvey Pekar at one setting and stuff like that, I tell you what, the older we get, the duller life gets. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
You got to realize he started this in the 70s, and if I have guessed the schedule because I wasn't there when, this was not coming out. This was not in the house. I didn't find American Splendor till like the late 80s and like maybe read 2 of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But American Splendor, it's so sad he finally makes it to a big company, Vertigo. Get probably a little bit more scratch than what he was getting.
Mm-hmm.
They got great artists on here working with him finally and stuff. And, the first story is all about him trying to unclog a toilet and being a man.
Yeah.
He unclogs the toilet and holds the plunger up in there and is like, I am a man now. And he was like, he was trying to say, I didn't say I was a man at my bar mitzvah at 13 because I was 13. I knew I wasn't a man, but I'm a man now because I defeated this toilet. And I'm just like, dude, I'm like, I've got American Splendor stories where he's walking around throwing dog shit at people. I'm like,
I wonder how mad he is now that vinyls came back into vogue again and now it's expensive.
Oh, he died. He died a couple years ago.
Graphic Man is shocked that this comic book store owner chose teaching over comics.
He's the guy. Yeah. Anyway,
I like money, evidently.
I was just like Tim in that I probably read some American Splendor back when I was late teens, early 20s, and the early 80s, and it just did not grab me. And I don't think I checked it out again until the American Splendor movie, which was really, really good. And that made me check out some American Splendor comics, and I liked them. And also, whereas him at Vertigo, he's got one that he did with Dean Haspiel, who I went to school with, called The Quitter. It's up there on my shelf somewhere. That's really good. Have you read The Quitter by
No.
by Harvey Pekar? And yeah, oh, that's Dean. Yeah, it's really good. It's about all the things he's quitting, and he had a really interesting. Like once again, a lot of it's mundane, but the story was Harvey Pekar saying he was not a good student, but people thought he was because he had a good memory. So all through high school, he was a pretty good student because he could memorize things. But then when he went to college and had to learn new stuff, he completely failed that. And people were always shocked because he always did standardized test well. He had good, but he's like, I am not very smart. I am good at, I could memorize stuff. But then when he had to work to memorize stuff, he wasn't interested. So it's like the story of all the things he's quit over his life. And education was one of them.
I think Harvey Pekar, you got to have a certain amount of maturity, number one, and life experience to really enjoy his stuff. Because I actually remember when Harvey Pekar clicked for me. I read a little here, a little there, and it was sort of like this is an alternative comic, so it was supposed to be cool. And I started suspecting other people weren't getting it either. They were just out there to be loud and bragging that they were into an alternative comic. And then I read, and they put it in the movie. I was so happy they put it in the movie, but then they did the phone book where he talked about his name being Harvey Pekar, and over the years he would check the phone book and see other Harvey Pekars in the same town and want to know about them. And I was like, I did that when I was 7 when we got our first phone. I found Pam and Bill Mullins, and in the trailer park, I looked their address up, and I went, oh my God, they're next door. We had another Bill and Pam Mullins right next door to us in the phone book. And I thought that was the stuff when I was 7. You know,
Tim, did you ever check for Navin Johnson in the phone book?
No.
Okay.
I can remember back in the MySpace days.
Oh God, yeah.
There was a Jared Osborne who was befriending all the other Jared Osbornes he could find on MySpace. And there's like 100 of them.
On Facebook, I had something like 75 Tim Mullinses friended, and I told them what I was doing. And they all kind of left because there's this one Tim Mullins up in Vermont who was just a filthy mouth deviant. You know, that's not me. And he had words with me, you know.
I knew a different Tim Mullins before I ever met Tim.
Early American Splendor has a much more sour zing. And I can remember, I can remember this thought just popped into my head. I can remember 20-year-old Jared saying to himself, well, if you're going to make a comic about your everyday life better be a little more interesting than this. But now, 40-year-old Jared, even, 15 years ago, was much more interested in sort of the minutia of everyday life that gets forgotten.
Well, I tell you what a pisser is. I mean, Jared, you make comics, right? So,
Right.
if you don't judge me here is what I'm trying to get at. But there's some stuff I wrote when I was like 19, 20 and all this stuff, and I had not read PCAR yet. I was probably about 20. I was out of the military.
Right.
So it was sometime after 22, 23. But I was always a pisser because some of the stuff that I would play around with and stuff like that, I was writing like Harvey PCAR. Like it already been my whole point. You know what I mean? And then I think I showed you some book, some I can't remember what it's called, man, but it's a guy who, when he draws heads, he just draws a circle. He gives them weird eyes, and it's about the office. And anyway, but I found a page where I was trying to describe where I lived in a trailer park about a swamp one time, and that son of a bitch in one panel with 7 words did more than I could after 2 weeks of trying to make a perfect panel describing the swamp I lived in. And I like threw it down, and I'm like, I couldn't. That's my experience with Harvey PCAR. I would have certain ideas, and I would read what he did in 3 pages.
And you quit just like him too.
And I had 7 pages. And now I'm finding out he wrote The Quitter. That's where I was going.
Yeah. PCAR really made me realize that comics were more than superheroes. Yeah.
Growing up with like heavy, we tried to talk all the stuff that was out, the heavy metals and sci-fi magazines and Conan and stuff like that. I think it was like, I didn't know that could be slice of life, if that makes any sense. Like who would want to read about standing in line at a grocery store,
Just depends on whose life it is.
Well, the closest I was interested in slice of life as a teenager was when I read Spanish comics by Miguel Ancho Prado. He has a series of vignettes and short stories, which are usually collected in albums. And it's kind of Kafka, but actually funny.
Yeah, Quitter by Harvey PCAR and Dean Haspiel came out from Vertigo. What year was this? This may have been PCAR's last book, or there may have been one more after this. 2005. So yeah, if you can find this one, it's a good one.
Okay. When you showed it, I've seen the cover before, but apparently that's as far as I got. I never picked it up. It never really caught my eye, but I recognized
I recognize that cover too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hard to find PCAR's early issues these days. I imagine if you're a Harvey PCAR fan, you have the early issues and you're not getting rid of them.
I think I have like 2 or 3. I'm looking up what I have in my CLZ app because I finally, a couple years ago, I found it's in mint condition. I think it's 1990. I'm going to look it up here. But I've grabbed it because I'd heard about it for years. It had an Alan Moore story in there. So I get it, and it's like 6 panels that Alan Moore wrote about a cat or something. I'm like, and I'm flipping through it like, that's it? That's it?
Yeah.
This just reminded me there was I didn't read a lot of Crumb I've read a bit now, but I can remember the one Crumb panel that we used to have posted at Marvel, and everybody could relate to it. I forget which comic it's from, but there's a comic, there's a collected edition of Crumb called Women or something like that. And it's a lot of Crumb strips that have to do with women. And there's just a panel of him, like in a younger Crumb. You see his face at the drawing board, and above his head, he's remembering. There's just like a little like a thought balloon of a woman laughing at him, going hee 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 hee, and then there's Crumb drawing at his table saying, "I'll show them all." And then another arrow pointing at him saying, "A bitter, twisted dude. He never got over it." And let me tell you, most artists and cartoonists can relate to being a bitter, twisted dude who never got over it. My favorite Crumb panel.
The original American Splendor only had 17 issues because I'm pretty sure he was putting them out once a year, right?
I may have one issue of it here somewhere from the early 80s.
Well, apparently I haven't put them in my app. I'm going to have to go through my magazine box, but this is where I was coming up with the dog shit and all that stuff. I don't know if it's going to show up. It's number 15. And he's got a dog behind him in a cage. Now, here's what I love about this. I don't know if this was PCAR or the artist, but he's wearing the green army jacket that all the the hippies who missed out on the love war in the 70s and stuff.
Oh,
You know,
what is
the
that Scorsese movie?
the taxi
Driver. There we
yeah,
go.
yeah. And he's sitting here saying on the cover, in the 90s, I want to be harder on everybody. You know, the fast, inept, harassed ain't buying my comics. Stupid ass editors don't want to print my stories and articles. I got to push more than ever, really sweat things out, people. I wish there was another way, but my fabled charm ain't getting the job done. So he went from that fine attitude and yelling his eyes to now he was at the end there. He was making a story about defeating the toilet so he could be a man.
Good. Let me see what was in my book. Oh, I want to mention another minor controversy this week I noticed today was that there are big complaints on the internet about Marvel comics that came out this week, printed on tissue paper. People were like, how did they find a worse paper than they've ever had before? And it made me wish I had picked one up and looked, because I didn't know. I'm like, how? Because I'm like, the Marvel paper has been pretty thin for years now, but it got even worse. And I think Marvel made an announcement that it's going to be cleared up soon or something, but they're not reprinting those issues on better paper. So it's like everybody was like, "Oh my God, this paper is terrible." So rush out and get your 9.8s of Marvel comics this week and next week, because they won't be plentiful.
Maybe they found a stock of vellum.
I think I have finally reached the end point of my mourning stage of what modern comics and Marvel used to be, whatever, you know what I mean? Because I got
over that in 1988. So
I
know what you mean.
Well, some of us needed more time, right?
I know.
But I'm so bored to even hear. I'm tired of hearing people complain about modern comics. I'm like, don't buy it. You've been burned to burn to burn.
There are plenty of code comics out there. I buy them every week.
I'm tired of it. And then I'll be on a message board. I found the Justice League Giffen era, the Monkeys stuff like that. And I thought, I'm like, I found a place where, okay, this guy's looking back. That's a 5-year span of books to look at, and maybe a mini series here and there. And I thought it was safe. I get on there, I think it was yesterday, and the first thing I see is I fucking hate Tom King for what he did to the Justice League and Human Target. And I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, but it seems like anything that comes up about modern comics is just complaining.
I think on the internet, there are more people complaining about Marvel and DC than reading Marvel and DC.
I hear it in real life too, and they actually have the books. I mean, you're probably right. I'm not saying that fact doesn't exist. I'm not counterpointing you. I'm just saying that I've just noticed they have books in hand while they're complaining.
Marvel is not the definition of modern comics. They're just a nostalgia shadow play. Yeah, when I'm at the comic shop and someone says, "Oh my goodness, I can't," Marvel or DC, I'm like, look at all these comics I got right here.
5 or 6 years ago, I said at that time, Marvel's biggest competition is Marvel's past. That was their biggest competition. I think all their best stuff was written back in the day, and people talk about it. I don't think anybody can name their a story from 2 years ago from Marvel that they read and know it was 2 years ago. You and I have talked about how who's writing these books? Do they have any? Who's a famous writer now?
Tons and tons of fine modern comics.
I think a lot of people on the internet are just looking for justification for their opinions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's more good modern comics than I can buy.
Yeah, but nobody's advertising them.
Yeah, well,
that came out last year. This should have been Book of the Year.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it. When a good book does come, I bought 27 books last year, and I think about 25 of them are really good. But you put them out and you talk about them, and it's more fun for people to complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This should be up for awards.
Yeah. Paulo said no one's advertising them. I don't even think that's the problem. Because we're talking about actual people who've bought comics and know comics exist. And if you're complaining about modern and DC comics, that means you know where and how to get comics.
Right.
And if you really wanted some good comics, you could get them.
Yeah, but they don't want good
really
comics.
Want good comics.
They just want to say it about by Marvel and DC.
Yeah, they want the comics when they were 14, and then they're not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Howler, are you reading the new Silver Surfer Rebirth by Mars and Lim?
No, I don't really. I kind of stay away from a lot of the modern stuff, but I do like the idea of these books coming out where they're pulling the creative teams from the '90s and stuff. I mean, they have this what was it, X Factor book or an X-Men book that I saw Walt Simonson getting interviewed on Instagram of all places, where he and Louise came back and did a X Factor story that took place during the run in the '80s and stuff like this, where they brought back Ron Mars through the Silver Surfer and stuff. I think it'd be awesome. But where I see that rebirth, it's making me think Green Lantern rebirth with Jeff Johns and stuff. So if I hear good things, I think the last Marvel comic I checked out was where they're getting Peter David to come in and he's doing Maestro stories. That's a '90s book. A character in the '90s, the Maestro, and I think he's had 2 or 3 miniseries on that character. And then they got a new #1 coming up where they're going back even further into the '90s when they had 2 issues of the new the new Fantastic Four, where it was Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and the Gray Hulk, and I don't remember who the 4th one was. So there's a lot of stuff that they're going back to like this.
Yeah, isn't there a new Wolverine by Larry Hama with the story set in Madripoor and Wolverine playing Patch?
Yeah, they're going back and they're starting to mine their history. And not use it forward, but they're just saying, here's something to complete your set. You know what I mean? Like,
you can't ask these guys to now that they're in their 60s to write like they did it when they were 30 to people who were 10 back then and are now 40.
I don't know that what I heard about that Walt Simonson, Louise Simonson X Factor. It was like he even drew in the style that he was doing there in the '80s. Like they nailed it. So it's made me want to go back and find those 2 or 3 books and look at it. But I think with most of the people you're talking about, I think you're right. Totally right.
Walter Simonson has a short story in Thor 250 or 750. Pardon me. He just posted today on Facebook. So he's got a short, I think, Beta Ray Bill story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's cool mentioning Walt Simonson, not to get off of it, but I found a couple for a quarter a piece. This one was 20 cents. But a bunch of these inside image things. And this was Walt Simonson coming on Cyberforce. I just flipped through this and he's getting interviewed. And right before he sat there and whoever's interviewing him was sort of like, you could tell, I mean, I can't believe they wrote it word for word. But they were sort of like, hey, Walt, you want to bring that little thing you were talking about, the image? And it was Star Slammers. He went, oh, I don't know. I'm still looking for a home. I don't know if Image is going to be the place. It ended up being at Malibu through their Bravura line or whatever.
Wow.
I was like, I just kind of like thought that was cool that he's getting interviewed by Image and he's not like kissing butt. He's like, I don't know.
And I'm not sure if lots of people talked about Smith's Monsters or just everybody we know on YouTube. Because everybody we know on YouTube talked about it.
It was all over Instagram. I saw nobody on Facebook. And like I said, I deactivated Facebook for quite a while. I don't know if it's when this book came out. But it was really odd because like I did a video on it. I saw some other videos on it. And, I didn't expect it to pop or anything, but people don't want to talk positive about comics or talk about something that's really good. They just moved on to something.
Well, Monster's got a lot of coverage outside the normal industry channels.
Okay. A lot of the pictures I see on Instagram, it's been converted to their language. So they're from other countries. Just the hashtag Barry Windsor Smith, and, it popped up in my feed. Everybody that was getting it was happy as shit to have it, though. That's it. Instagram,
Saga is selling much more than most Marvel and DC comics. It sure is. Spawn, too.
Mm-hmm.
Spawn is up there. Sorry, GV. I may be to blame. I convinced 2 people at my shop to read Saga. I do it to support the local shop, but I die a little each time. I figure
the reason he did it was so that they would buy the copies so he wouldn't have to see them when he went in there.
You see,
this is Gore thinking that You guys look like idiots. I'm going to recommend Saga to you.
Gore's preaching Saga. Aha, the world is ending.
I'll tell you what killed Saga for me, but it's not what people think. If you think way back, Saga was advertised as being, this is going to be like heavy metal. If you read old heavy metal, I read Saga and I'm waiting for that moment, and I'm like, this is not heavy metal. This is like,
I never made the heavy metal connection. So
no, I mean, if there's an advertisement out there that said that this is like inspired from heavy metal or something,
or if I did read it, I paid no attention to it because I was not a big heavy metal fan. So I think everyone I follow is positive about comics too. And I don't follow, and the sites that talk about mostly Marvel and DC, I'm of course not going to follow. So,
well, I don't think there's anything wrong with a balance. As long as it's like, some things are going to be bad. We'll talk about it, but not every.
Right. But if you want a real popular channel on YouTube to make it your business, you talk about Marvel and DC. You don't talk about indies. So I don't watch if your channel looks super slick and professional, I'm probably not interested in it.
Yeah, especially because they're going to talk about, so what are the new comics that you should invest in?
Yeah.
Well,
because we say so. And if you paid $50 for it. Pathetic.
I'm not going to name it, but there was one guy that everybody was trying to tell me I need to watch. And I checked him out, and it wasn't really that big a deal, but I'm like, wow, man, that's some production value. Yeah. And I'm not going to say how I found out. I'm not going to mention him and stuff, but it turns out that I think he's got a few writers and an editorial team because his real life job gives him access to that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And I'm just sort of like, oh, this guy's a phony. I'm like,
Was it Reggie Collect?
No, not that. It's not him. But I found out something behind the scenes that I'm like,
oh, is that the bodybuilder guy that you were talking about? Paulo?
Reggie Collect?
Yeah.
I think he is. I remember seeing a lot of people were talking, all of a sudden, a lot of people were talking about Reggie Collect, and I tuned into his channel, and then he says something. I got into comics 9 months ago. Oh, you don't actually like comics. Because he got into comics 9 months ago, and now he's doing a 3-hour live show about how collectible they are. No. Go away, Reggie Collects. You suck.
He's just running a business.
I will admit I'm a little bit of a dinosaur because in my mind, Captain Strangelove built the house. The rest of us sort of set the table. And now it's like these guys are coming in and they're taking credit for the dinner. And I'm like, whatever, sir.
Reggie Collects is a bodybuilder.
Yeah, there's a new channel that disappointed me. I can't remember the guy's name, the username on YouTube, but he does Gru-based videos.
Gru?
Yes. But the subjects he chooses to cover are so, what's the word I'm looking for, minuscule, or just like so bizarre. It's like, I don't understand why he even bothers. He's not talking about the actual books themselves. He's talking about things like, GruTube.
GruTube.
Just, I don't know. It's just,
I'll check him out. Is it a case? Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
He's just focusing on just like stuff that might interest an 8-year-old for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I like the idea, but the execution, boy, you're just not doing it.
Yeah, I'll check him out. I really hope it's a case of he's just trying to find he's just trying to find that comfort level on YouTube starting out. It's kind of hard to get where you're needing.
He needs to keep looking then because I don't know.
So Pop Culture Philosophers is an example of a popular, positive channel if you need one. So I came to the realization many years ago, I'm really not into pop culture. I don't know why I ever thought I was. I'm really not. But
well, it might be your roots.
Things that name themselves after pop culture kind of turned me off a little.
Well, probably. I think people forget. I think a lot of people forget, and they may not have known it. And some people, it's just comic books. They just read their comic books, But comic books, it used to be counterculture.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Comic books pop.
It was a bit more rebellious than what we give it credit for. It kind of went against the grain. That's why I always feel like people were missing out. You know what I mean? When they were being trendy, I'm over here reading about Daredevil's nun mom popping up, giving him a kiss. Deep stuff, taboo stuff, a little bit.
To give you an example of how comics used to be, my friend Ed just reminded me of this story. It was when the one time I went someplace on spring break. We went up to Massachusetts. Who goes up to Massachusetts in spring break? But we were hanging out with some friends in this little cabin out there. So here I am. It's 1988, so I'm 20 years old. And it was my friend John, my friend Ed, John's girlfriend at the time, and I were all in this cabin. And at one point, and John, Ed, and I are all comic readers. And at one point, John's girlfriend has 3 of her friends from camp come up. They're all about 19 or 20. I think they were a couple years younger than me, maybe even 18 and 19. But they're coming over to meet us. And these 3 girls, who we don't know from Adam, we've never met before. As soon as they walk in the door and see we're reading comics, they immediately start making fun of us. And that's how it was. 3 complete strangers in a cabin. They see comics, they immediately start making fun of us. And that's how comics were in the height of Watchmen, the height of Dark Knight, the height of comics aren't for kids anymore. And still, 3 random 19 years old women will just make fun of you immediately.
I told you
they
the
see
story.
you reading a comic.
I told you the story about I had a girlfriend, and this happened twice a year apart. I had a girlfriend. I put her in my room. I went and took a shower so we could go back out, and she found my comic books and left. That happened twice.
Right. That was and Ed says he remembers this incident for how I took my revenge and got them fighting amongst themselves really fast, because I knew that there were 3 friends from camp. So they started making fun of us about the comics. And I went, oh, so you 3 know each other from camp? So who fooled around with whose camp boyfriend? And of course, playing the odds, someone did. So they immediately fought for the next half an hour amongst themselves because, when they were 3 years ago, when they were 16, someone fooled around with someone else's boyfriend at camp.
Yeah, I looked at my wife this morning and I was just picking on her about her and the cat. And I'm like, this frenemy stuff is getting really old. I'll tell you what I'd like to hear if Gore's still watching. Gore Vidal is the big Love and Rockets guy. I wonder if that was considered counterculture. Didn't that start like in 81? And then
it was. Yeah. I had early Love and Rockets when Maggie and Hopi were young punk rockers.
Yeah.
There were people at my college in 1986, 1987 that were so into Love and Rockets and read no other comic.
Yeah. See, I didn't know if it was alternative, because that was alternative comics. There was a whole alternative scene throughout the 80s, or if that was counterculture. That's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, we're getting a little
what's interesting? I can remember it was right about that time. Have you ever read all of Love and Rockets, especially the beginning stuff?
No. But it's a goal of mine. Okay, it's a goal of mine. Especially that's what's funny.
It was the Jaime Hernandez stuff they were really into, because that's where Maggie and Hopi was. And there's an omnibus of it, Jaime Hernandez, Love and Rockets Volume 1 that has it all. But I didn't read the earliest issues. I read some of it. But when I went and read like the omnibus of all the stuff, it was amazing to me, because I can remember in like 87, like my one good friend there, Suti, who was she was a punk girl and really liked Love and Rockets, but was kind of getting out of it now. And I was like, you don't like it? And she's like, well, Maggie and Hopi are split up now. They're not even together. And I'm like, what? And when I finally read all those early issues, it was amazing to me how it was only the first really, I think, relatively small part of the story where Maggie and Hopi were teenage punk rockers going to clubs. I don't know. And then the plot, like after, I don't know, 3-4 issues, however many it wasn't really long, broke them up. And they went in kind of different directions. And it's like they didn't meet again for like 20 years, real time.
See, yeah, I know they aged. That's what gets me. I found out these characters aged in real
time.
Yeah,
they aged too.
But see, what you're doing, and I'll comment on Sleep Reader. See what you're doing. That's what gets me interested in wanting to read Sleep. Read.
It's good stuff.
You're not talking. You're talking about a book, but you're talking about the characters like they're living, breathing people.
Right.
That's got to be good stuff.
Jaime, this is what I always say. Jaime Hernandez is, and I like Beto's stuff too. I don't just because I'm not mentioning it here. I love Luba, but Jaime Hernandez is such a good storyteller. He can name a story, The Death of Speedy, and I'm shocked when Speedy dies.
Gotcha.
I was like shocked. I'm like, holy cow, Speedy died, and I'm like, oh, the name of the story is The Death of Speedy.
Yeah, and I don't want to butcher love. I don't.
You're so into the story, you forget that the name of the story is The Death of Speedy.
I got you. See, I don't want to butcher it because Love and Rockets is well loved, and all this stuff. But what's the deal with the mechanic? I saw a trade called The Mechanic, and it was a girl.
A repackaging of the earliest Maggie and Hopi stuff.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, since Maggie and Hopi were so popular, because the book actually started out as a sci-fi book.
Yeah,
where Maggie or Hopi. Yeah, it only lasted an issue. Where it's called Mechanic because she was a mechanic that fixed rocket ships. And then they immediately ignored all that and went into the real world.
See, when I met Scott, were you there when we met her? Were you there when we met were you there with
we were down at the bar in Charlotte.
Yeah, they were behind us at the bar. And their girls that were with them or their wives or whatever had the 50s cut dresses with the rocket ships all over and stuff. So
that I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking it all in. So
that's what it's called, Locas, Locas, and there's a Locas 2 too, but this one is huge.
If you
not
don't mind,
cost.
If you don't mind, I might message you sometime about what to get of that.
Okay. This is what, if you want to read the Jaime Hernandez stuff, this is it.
Okay, I'll probably message you about that stuff. I might just go ahead and order it.
Wow, this came out in 2004. Let's hope it's still in print.
I just need a direction because I understand the brothers both wrote stuff separate. I've been doing a little digging here and there.
Your direction would be north by northwest.
North by northwest. Okay.
Beto is more prolific than Jaime.
Gore Vidal's popped in there, and then I'll comment on Sleepy stuff. We can get a conversation out of that if you want. In the early 80s, among my peers, that was a chasm between independent readers and DC and Marvel readers. I was reading it in the early 80s, and only one other kid besides me admitted to reading LR.
That's interesting.
Yeah. We got grief for reading Independence by Mains. Yeah, that happens too. Jared is right. My favorite story.
I started getting back into college or comics, when I was in college, we didn't really have people that when we talk, other comics fans, they weren't really discriminatory about Marvel, DC versus indie. It seems like it was pretty good mix of all of it.
I actually think that might be something about our area because we got a lot more tolerance about things than people give us credit for. Like that doesn't sound like something.
By the way, this is one of my favorite covers of the year. So simple. This is a Jaime Hernandez one. The latest issue of Love and Rockets that came out a week ago. Just love this cover.
Well, I tell you what, if we ever end up doing something about Love and Rockets, we got to have Gore Vidal on here.
Yeah.
I was doing a rant on one of my videos a couple of weeks ago, and it was something about loving something for years, and all of a sudden it becomes popular because of a movie or something. He jumped in there and said if they ever did a movie about Love and Rockets, and everybody started loving Rockets now after ignoring it for decades, he'd be pissed. So I feel if Love and Rockets ends up becoming something on one of these shows, he should be having an invite. So
there's a book out there. I still don't have it. I took it out of the library twice. Matter of fact, I read it. It's because I've read Love and Rockets for the last 25 or 30 years. In piecemeal, because you get a little piece of the story every month or every 6 months, whatever it is. And until I got those locuses in like 2004, I never sat down and read all of Jaime's stuff, and it was really good.
Yeah.
And also, Beto has one called Luba that's just as kind of thick. That's a lot of his stories with it. There's really 3 sisters, but Luba and her 2 sisters. Luba was just the kind of the first one to show up in the story, but it's about all 3 sisters. Really thick book. For the first time I read that like 2 years ago, I took it out of the library. I took it out of the library again this summer just to look at. It's really good. But
Awesome.
Beto is a lot more prolific. He's also got these really cool little graphic novels that one of his characters, her name just flew out of my head, is an actress. And she's a Mexican actress who's in the story is famous for making like these B movies over the years that have a lot of nudity in them. She got a really big chest too. Fritzy. And some of his graphic novels are the graphic novels of the movies she made.
Right.
In the Love and Rockets stories. So it's just like these really weird Mexican B movies starring Fritzy.
Oh my gosh. No wonder. I mean, you get to be in that. It's meta. It went meta.
Yeah. And they're so weird too. Yeah, Luba. Luba is excellent. I love Jaime's art. Yeah. His art is terrific. He's
not to switch gears or like ignore what Sleepy was trying to say about the Marvel being counterculture in the 60s. It was the character of the Hulk when I was about 9 years old. I didn't have the word counterculture, but I started realizing the Hulk is like a perfect example of the counterculture of the 60s they were doing, because I started reading up on the Comics Code Authority and I found some article about the things that were not allowed in comics. And I was sitting here like, the military cannot be displayed as the bad guys. And I'm like, the Hulk. And that was like, it clicked for me. I'm like, it was so counterculture that they got by the Comics Code Authority in the early 60s by having the military, General Ross, be the bad guy, but you didn't know it because he was a monster. And that's one of the few things I was sort of like starting to click with.
You see how they get around it.
Yeah. I think we're on a big delay wherever Gore's at. He's very upset. So we got a little bit of a delay here. Well, you guys mind if I pop out and eat and come back? I'm having a good time.
We're leaving in about 15 minutes. So
okay.
I'm gonna stick on till then. Yeah, we
usually go ahead and pop out.
Okay. So stay on for another 15 minutes.
Yeah. My belly's growling, brother. My belly's growling. I've had this.
Eat right on camera. Who cares?
I wanted to bring up something here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yourself on mute while you're eating.
I wanted to bring up something here because last week was the Angoulême Festival in France.
Oh,
and Jared, didn't you see what a Julie Doucet comic last year?
I don't know. I remember a Julie Doucet comic coming out.
Yeah, because she was the Grand Prix winner at Angoulême.
There was an omnibus of her work that was out, like a Dirty Plot omnibus. I think we talked about.
Because if she won the Grand Prix this year, that means she's going to have her own exhibit next year.
Oh,
and she's Canadian and a North American winning the Grand Prix two times in a row. Because last year the winner was Chris Ware, and he got an exhibit this year.
Wow!
And not only that, the Howard Cruz's Stuck Rubber Baby won the Heritage Award.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of representation from independent American comics in the because they love Chris Ware over there at Angoulême.
Everybody loves Chris. He's the intelligentsia's favorite cartoonist.
I'm going to say something's going to get me in trouble.
Okay.
If Julie Doucet wins the Grand Prix winner at Angoulême, but Con Crew exists and it doesn't, I'm not living in the same universe.
Well, Con Crew would not be the type of thing that gets a major award. Although
I understand, but to me, Julie Doucet's art is like some of the ugliest art I've ever seen in my entire life.
Ugly is beautiful.
Oh yeah, then you should see the comic that won
for me.
You should have seen the comic that won the Youth Prize for the ages 12 to 16 which is made in Cal Art style. It's called Snapdragon. It is French, but it's called Snapdragon, and it's wannabe manga. But you'd probably like this one. That won the high school favorites award. It's called Yojimbot.
Somebody.
It kind of looks like Scud the Disposable Assassin dressed as a samurai.
Somebody did a video on that recently. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember Sleepy or Terrence or somebody. I don't remember who was doing it, but it looked interesting.
Limbot.
But Julie Doucette's art is just, me and that art live in two separate worlds.
I was never a huge Julie Doucette fan. I think I only have a couple of issues of her stuff, but
I think I'm allergic to it, actually.
Can't be a fan of everybody.
True.
And Gore's given us a little history of the Hernandez brothers here. They got into it because their mom, who was an avid comic book reader. Yeah, there's a lot of, matter of fact, one of the books I got for Christmas this year.
I love that the Lucha Libre may have a big influence on the book. That's awesome.
Oh, speaking of that, there's a Santo box set that just came out.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Blu-ray. Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me that's coming out. It surprises me that it came out in America. You know, I mean,
it took a while. Yeah.
Queen of the Ring, which is a Jaime Hernandez book of lady wrestlers.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the whole book is just drawings of lady wrestlers that he's done. Posters and...
I'm trying to think. I think I have a Rob Zombie book or something where it's called The Nail. And I think it's like... oh my God, Bruiser. It's like a Bruiser Brody type wrestler named The Nail, and he ends up finding like a savage Bigfoot, and they like fight it out in the woods for a while. Yeah,
that sounds like an Eric Powell type.
Hey, Jared, Jared, Yojimba. Yeah, this thing I won one of the awards at Angoulême, and I thought I thought Scott would appreciate this because it kind of, it's like I said, it kind of looks like if Scud the Disposable Assassin was a samurai.
Sort of. Yeah. I can't remember who. Somebody did a video on that recently. I watched, and I thought that looks interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Robot Usagi Yojimbo.
No, just the title's about the same. That's about
it.
Hey, I just showed this book. Got it for Christmas.
I just need to go ahead and try to find that omnibus of Scud the Disposable Assassin. Just get it over with.
I have a bunch of old Scud stuff.
Well, I think I sold the, I don't know, 4 or 5 issues I had. It was before, during when he got the arm that was werewolf. You know what I'm saying? Somewhere around there. I remember I got rid of them because I heard the omnibus was coming out. And I'm like, I'll just get the omnibus. And now here we are.
Now you know better than to believe the omnibus is coming out and you're going to find it. You know, it's like the omnibus is coming out. Oh,
yeah, here we are.
6 years later. Hey, where's that omnibus?
Oh, that's fine because I finally got around to and I posted this on Facebook. A lot of the stuff sounds random, but I've actually been having these conversations and they're on my mind. But one of my buddies named William on Facebook made this thing about how years ago, seems like it could be yesterday. He's at that age, he's figured it out. And I mentioned to him that like I finally got all the issues to like the Challengers of the Unknown by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale that I've been working on, and it's like 6, 7, or 8 issues. And I finally just went ahead and ordered number 6 off of my comic shop. And then I realized this has been going on not just a couple years ago, but that book came out in 1990. I just got around to getting the last issue.
Is that book any good?
Huh?
Is the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb version of Challengers any good?
Getting the mindset that it came out in 1990, it's Jeff Loeb's first book. I dig it. He went a little bit meta. It's still a book that when you read it, you get that one book, and that lasts you a month. You need to wait a month for the second one because they do a lot of storytelling. But I'll go ahead and tell you the main plot is that 2 of the characters die, and 3 of the challengers, after this whole thing about being on borrowed time, they get sued. Superman comes in and testifies for him. And then when they thank him, he was like, I just did this because I don't want every hero in the world get sued for doing their job. So then they all go out in the world and try to find themselves. One character ends up studying under Doctor Strange at Marvel. One character but they don't say it. It goes a little bit meta.
Right.
One character becomes like Rambo meets Punisher serial killer, and then they all come back together. It's interesting, and I like it. I like it, and it's cheap. So if you get it and don't like it, I won't feel bad. But I dig it.
Okay, I just want.
It's a little bit ahead of its time now that I'm reading it with things that have gone on. But no, it's I dig it. I really like it. It's a smart book. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that just reminded me. A few weeks ago, I showed the another book from I think 1990, Twilight by Howard Chaykin and Jose Garcia Lopez.
I'm taking that. Yep, I love it.
I bought and read for the first time, even though I have a page of original art for it that I bought a decade ago. And I'm like, you know what? I really should buy this book because I got the page of original art for it. I really should read the book. And finally, I saw an interview with Howard Chaykin where he mentioned it. And I went on eBay and ordered it.
Yeah. The only reason I probably like that book is I think I got it I think I got it around 94. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember kind of passing it up because I didn't realize it was Garcia Lopez art,
Mm-hmm.
But the only reason I was able to follow it and dig it is that those sci-fi characters were in the reprints of my stepdad and uncle's comics I read. The only thing they were missing were the Atomic Knights and a little Adam Strange. So I knew who the characters were, and that's the only reason I really dug it, seeing what they did with
I didn't know who any of the characters were, but that was okay.
Well, that's fine. You don't need to know who they are, but to me, when I saw
you were like, oh
God, who's the guy? He had the girlfriend robot, and then she was like he had a sex addiction with
I can't. He was the villain of the piece, wasn't even.
He was the character that I figured out that I'm like, oh my God, they revamped the 50s character. You know what I mean? I was like, that's the one I figured out what they were doing, because I remember it was weird. He had a robot girlfriend, or it came off that way in the reprints,
Robots in disguise.
Tommy Tomorrow, I knew nothing about. I never ran across any of his reprints, but I knew who he was. Crisis on Infinite
I knew his name.
Crisis on Infinite Earth. Yeah, the history of the history of the DC universe after Crisis said that Commandy and Tommy Tomorrow were the same people, and I'm like, bullshit. Yeah, they took away the disaster.
The Great Disaster.
The Great Disaster. And when time changed, thanks to Crisis, that's how we got Tommy Tomorrow in that Silver Age sci-fi universe. It's because the Great Disaster never happened in the revamp.
Homie, don't play that.
Nobody did. That's why nobody remembers it.
Don't believe that.
Yeah, nobody remembers it. That's what I'm trying. Or maybe it's in issue 12. I don't know. It's in a Crisis book or the history of the DC universe.
You just mentioned getting around to read something that I wanted to bring that up. I actually read a book yesterday that I've been wanting to read for a long time. It's called The Atomic Empire, and I read it digitally, so I don't have a copy of it. But let's take a look at something.
It sounds familiar.
Try something here.
He's trying to share his screen. Let's see.
Can you see that?
Nope.
No, that doesn't
Did not pop up.
Crap. Oh well.
He wanted to show us the cover, but
oh well.
We'll have to look it up ourselves.
I also don't agree with the fact that they tried to say that OMAC was granddad to Commandy, and that Clark Kent Superman is a great descendant of theirs. I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah, I never paid any attention to that stuff. It never made any sense.
Well, I just went down memory lane there,
DC trying to make their continuity work when clearly there were different worlds. Makes no sense.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Commandy finally really lost it when they brought out the talking kangaroos. That was just too much.
When Kirby left is when Commandy lost it.
Yeah, but he eased out. He eased out a little bit, and they tried to keep it going. But when they brought out the kangaroos, it was really over. That's it. Yeah.
They should have got Devil Dinosaur to eat the kangaroos.
I would have dug that. I would have. Yes.
All right, it's time to wind down. So we'll say good. Before we wind down, I have to know if Tim's one of those persons who doesn't like to be seen eating.
I don't like to be seen eating.
It doesn't bother me to have people see me eating. It's just there's like I'm old school. There's an etiquette to where I used to eat pizza. I used to eat
because I always found that interesting. I don't care if people see me eating, but there are people who are like, "Oh no, don't look at me when I'm eating."
In the original days of the comic book roundtable and all that stuff, I would eat pizza, and apparently that was a problem for people to watch somebody eat pizza.
Yeah. No, you know what's the most disgusting thing ever is to watch people eating spaghetti.
So that bothers me. I don't know.
Bother me
I wonder what that.
I like spaghetti.
What that dividing line is in our brains between people who don't like to see anybody eating, think it's disgusting, people who don't, doesn't even notice.
I don't think it's the act of them eating. It's what they're eating.
No. It's for some people do not like to be seen eating and do not like to. Well, I mean, there are probably worse things that they can watch you eating than, but they don't like.
Hilarious is people
somehow
that
looking at the act of eating makes them go. Ugh.
What I always thought was hilarious is people that will not go out to eat by themselves.
There is that too.
If you're hungry, go eat.
I never understood it being a thing with people not wanting to go to the movies by themselves and to not go out eating by themselves like you're talking about. There was even a Laverne and Shirley episode about it I caught on rerun.
Yeah.
And I never thought that was a thing, man. I love going to the movies by myself on a Sunday. I want to watch the damn movie when nobody's talking.
Yeah. Wait 2 weeks for everybody to see the movie, then go by yourself. Yeah, and then do this.
Yeah. Get the popcorn, and you got the whole place to yourself. Maybe 4 or 5 other people there who do the same thing.
Bunch of boners out watching movies.
Now,
trench coats on.
Now, eating by myself, it's the culture's different. It's perfectly normal in Portugal to go eating by yourself, even if it's for dinner. I used to because I didn't want to get stuck in traffic. Instead of leaving at 6, I would leave at 8. So I'd go out to eat. There's a place that serves low quality chicken. Let's go eat the low quality chicken. I'm alone, of course. I'm gonna eat low quality chicken and you drink half a liter of red wine. Then I'd go home.
I'm that guy. Let's get there early before the crowd gets there, and let's get the hell out of here to beat traffic. I'm that guy.
No, not early. Later. I leave at 8. I start having dinner at 9.
No. Now, when I stayed at the hotel room, when Scott let me stay in his hotel room for Heroes Con, I was in line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was like, okay, I'm going to go across the road.
The places where I like to go eat when I left work work late, they were open until 2 in the morning, and the longshoremen then came to have dinner at around midnight.
It still pisses me off that I didn't know that all that good food was just a 2-block walk down from the hotel.
You're welcome.
Man. When I found out about that, I got mad.
Well, say goodbye now. Everybody know, walk 2 blocks from the hotel and the food is better. That's our lesson for this week. All right, so everybody have a good week out there, and we will catch you next Friday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.